Heavy outbreaks of rain initially across parts of the south, moving into parts of central and southeastern England through the course of the night. This rain is likely to be quite heavy and persistent, particularly across parts of East Anglia. Then a secondary area of rain starting to push into the southwest as we head towards dawn. Not only this, but it is going to bring some strong and gusty winds, particularly around coastal areas of East Anglia, east and southeastern parts of England. Even inland areas, however, we'll see some strong and gusty conditions. Also around coasts of Wales, southwest England, a chance we could see some gusty conditions here. Now, gust speeds could potentially be between 50 to 60 miles per hour, so some quite impactful winds as we head through into Thursday morning. Slightly more settled across Northern Ireland, northern parts of England, though it's going to be quite cloudy with some showers. A secondary area of low pressure just to the northwest of Scotland, so it's going to be quite breezy here at times, and we'll also see some showers here too. The rain will stick around across eastern, southeastern parts of England through much of Thursday. Still quite heavy and persistent at times, a chance we could see some localised impacts here, and still very strong and gusty winds, and quite strong northerly winds too, which could potentially have some impact across parts of southeastern England. So it's set to be a very unsettled day, the best of the brightness probably across western parts of Scotland, but here still quite breezy with some showers. Now, that rain will linger for a time across eastern areas of England before that low pressure will eventually drift off into the North Sea. So even through into the evening, we could see some strong winds across eastern areas of England. Friday will be a little bit brighter, some showers in places, but as we head towards the weekend, it is going to be feeling chilly.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
There's 2 weeks remaining in our latest, greatest giveaway. You could be in the driving seat of this Benamar Primera motorhome. This luxurious home from home comes with all the mod cons. Plus, you can use it with your current driving licence. We'll also boost your bank account with a whopping £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like. It only takes one entry to become a winner. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, it's 3 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News with me, Christopher Hope. We're broadcasting live across the UK with all the very latest news, debate and analysis until 6 p.m. tonight. And here's what's coming up on the show. Small boat arrivals hit a record high and one migrant sent back to France has returned by boat. Yes, it's the migrant hokey cokey, filling more claims the government's lost control of its own borders.
Well, there's no doubt these latest figures are a real blow for the government's smash the gangs policy. With still more than 2 months of the year to run, we are looking at a record year of small boat arrivals.
Jim Campbell has become the second candidate to withdraw from leading the government's grooming gang inquiry, just days after social worker Annie Hudson pulled out. That comes as Sir Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, defends his handling of the probe after Tory leader Kemi Badenoch accused him of hanging his head in shame.
The inquiry is not and will never be watered down. Its scope will not change. It will examine the ethnicity and religion of the offenders, and we will find the right person to chair the inquiry.
Well, Jim Campbell is out of the shambles, but the government is resisting claims that its national inquiry into grooming gangs is not in crisis, as survivors say this chair has to be a judge.
Rachel Reeves targets Britain's top earners, with lawyers, GPs and accountants set to face higher taxes under plans to raise billions for the Treasury. But is this fair? Fury over new figures showing nearly 1.9 million foreign nationals are now claiming benefits in our country. Critics call it unsustainable and unfair on UK taxpayers, while Labour insists that new rules will make migrants earn their stay. The King and Queen today will begin their state visit to the Holy See in Italy, where the King will be the first British monarch to pray with the Pope in 500 years. But is their trip being overshadowed by that man again, Prince Andrew? And Christmas comes early. A 65-foot tree has gone up in Birmingham 2 months before the big day, leaving locals divided. Is this festive spirit or too much too soon? But most importantly, I want to hear from you. Send me your views and post your comments by going to gbnews.com/your say. But now it's time for the news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Chris, thank you very much and good afternoon. The top stories: a major blow to the government's pledge to smash the gangs, as GB News can confirm the number of migrants crossing the English Channel has already surpassed the total for the whole of last year. 2 Border Force vessels arrived in Dover this afternoon, carrying around 150 people, taking this year's total to 36,886. That's 70 more than in all of last year. Senior security sources say it's deeply concerning for ministers, with more than 2 months still left in the year. Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood has reacted to the latest figures this afternoon. She says the previous government left our borders in crisis and we are still living with the consequences. These figures, she says, are shameful. The British people deserve better. The Prime Minister has come under fire after 4 survivors quit the government's grooming gangs inquiry, accusing officials of creating a toxic environment and watering it down. At Prime Minister's questions, Kemi Badenoch, the Conservative leader, accused the government of a cover-up, saying survivors feel dismissed and ignored.
They voted against the national inquiry 3 times, so the victims don't believe them. They can say no as much as they like. It is on the record. They don't like it, but it's true. Now, one of the victims has quit. They believe that the inquiry will downplay the racial and religious motivations behind their abuse. Aren't the victims right when they call it a cover-up?
But Sir Keir Starmer hit back, insisting the inquiry will not be watered down and will examine the ethnicity and religion of offenders in full.
Survivors have been ignored for many years, including by the state that, of course, is supposed to protect them. We owe it to them and to Fiona and to the country to answer the concerns that they have raised. The inquiry is not and will never be watered down. Its scope will not change. It will examine the ethnicity and religion of the offenders, and we will find the right person to chair the inquiry.
Meanwhile, another candidate to chair the Grooming Gang's inquiry has pulled out of the process. Jim Gamble was one of two people named in reports as a potential option to lead the inquiry. Another, Annie Hudson, withdrew yesterday. The Home Office says it's disappointed that both have pulled out. A migrant sent to France under the government's new one-in, one-out scheme has returned to the UK by small boat, saying he feared for his life in France. The man, now in immigration detention, claims he was trafficked and abused by smugglers and says he didn't feel safe after being sent back. Human rights groups say others removed under the scheme have also faced violence and exploitation, but the Home Office insists anyone who re-enters the UK illegally will be removed. A passport-forging criminal gang and firm of financiers have been hit with sanctions in a government crackdown on groups accused of propping up the people smuggling trade. The Balkan-based network is now banned from travelling to the UK and cut off from its finances. Sir Keir Starmer says it's another warning that gangs who trade in human suffering will face the full force of the UK's sanctions regime. In other news, food and drinks prices in the UK are increasing at their slowest rate in more than a year, while overall inflation remains unchanged for the third month in a row. Month on month, the cost of food and non-alcoholic drinks edged down slightly in September, the first fall since May last year. The ONS said this was likely to have been driven by increased sales and discounting by retailers. The UK inflation rate for all items remained stable at a lower than expected 3.8% in the year to September, official figures show. Chancellor Rachel Reeves said she was not satisfied with the numbers on inflation, while Shadow Chancellor Mel Stride said it was pushing up the cost of living.
3.8% is twice the Bank of England's target. It's twice what the government inherited on the day of the last general election. And what it means, of course, is higher prices for people in their shopping baskets. We know that food inflation is running at well over 4%. And this is down to this government's choices.
And in Dublin, 5 men have been charged with public order offences after violent scenes outside a hotel housing asylum seekers. Irish police were pelted with bricks, fireworks and missiles, and a van was set on fire during the unrest at the City West Hotel. Police Commissioner Justin Kelly described the scenes as thuggery and vowed to bring those responsible to justice. It's the second night of protests outside that hotel. The men, 2 in their 50s and 3 in their 40s, are due to appear in court today. The protests outside that hotel came after an alleged sexual assault on a girl in the vicinity in the early hours of Monday morning. Those are the latest headlines for now. More from me in half an hour.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of the markets. The pound buying you $1.3323 and €1.1501. The price of gold, £3,045 and 4 pence per ounce. The FTSE 100's at 9,516 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
We begin now with some breaking news from the last hour. A major blow for the government's smash the gangs policy, as the number of migrants arriving here by small boat has passed the total for the whole of last year. Here's our Home and Security editor, Mark White, with the latest.
Month after month, the criminal people smugglers have pushed small boat migrants out into the Channel in record numbers. It's left this government's promise to smash the gangs in tatters.
To smash the gangs, smash the smuggling gangs, smash the gangs.
Despite unpredictable weather conditions over recent weeks, every time the winds ease enough for the waves to die down, the boats are back in the Channel. It's meant today's grim milestone was inevitable. The number of arrivals now already passing the more than 36,800 who crossed during the whole of last year.
Well, these are shocking figures, and it shows that this Labour government has lost control of our borders. They cancelled the Rwanda deterrent just days before it was due to start. They had no replacement plan at all, other than a vacuous slogan that they were going to smash the gangs, and this is the inevitable consequence.
There has been a noticeable shift in the language being used by ministers as the numbers crossing continues to climb. Less and less about the efforts to dismantle the gangs and more emphasis on the deals with international partners. However, the agreement to send small boat migrants back to France has only seen returns measured not even in the hundreds, but in the dozens. And the much publicised plan to allow French police to push back migrant boats seems to be going nowhere. Many months down the line, there's no sign of this new tactic. French police unions are urging officers not to implement the tactic for fear that they'll be blamed should something go wrong. The former head of Border Force says Labour is desperately in need of a proper deterrent scheme.
I think it was a major error not to have at least given the Rwanda plan a chance when it was ready to go. And there's only so many times you can blame the previous government for your failures. Your legacy as a government will go down in these numbers, and the numbers at the moment are demonstrating that none of the current initiatives, at least so far, are having any real impact on the number of new arrivals coming across.
The government says there are no quick fixes to this long-running, very visible crisis. But as the Conservatives found out to their cost, the public's patience for protracted solutions has long since been exhausted. Mark White, GB News.
Joining me now is the GB News Home and Security Editor, Mark White. Mark White, I mean, what a moment here for this government. We're past the figure for last year. We're tracking towards 45,000 for this year, which would be the same as 2022.
Yeah, there's no doubt it looks as though we're on for a record year. Now, the government has been assisted, actually, in the fact that we've had really bad weather in the Channel for some considerable weeks. So you've had some days where the weather's been calm enough for 1,000 or more at a time to come across. So that's kept the number ticking up. But actually, we would have crossed this figure at least a month ago for the whole of last year. And that would have really been a number that would have surpassed that 45,000 for 2022, that previous record year. 36,816 for those that are interested in their figures was the total that we reached for the whole of last year, Chris. And already today we've had 151 across the channel, about another 60, 70 still to come in on another Border Force boat. That's taking us to 36,887 at the moment, so 36,900 odd by the end of this day today. So you can see how quickly things are ticking up. There's no doubt that this is a real blow for Sir Keir Starmer and that policy of smash the gangs.
That's right, Mark White. And also there's a further embarrassment, isn't there, with this attempt at this one-in, one-out scheme, i.e. that those arriving here illegally are sent back to France, and then that's an attempt to try and work down the figures in the hotels. There's a hokey-cokey migrant.
Yeah, it's a good way of putting it. There's no doubt that this is embarrassing. Many people actually predicted that there was nothing to stop someone who arrives across the Channel, who is part of this return deal, being returned to France, and then just being let loose, as the French will do. They're not kept in immigration detention when they arrive there. They're let loose. There's nothing to stop them coming back across the Channel. And this is a migrant. My sources have told me, it's confirmed, that this migrant was earmarked for deportation on the 6th of August when he arrived across the Channel on that date. He is an Iranian national. He was then sent back on the 16th of September, the 18th of September, I think, and then has returned back just a month later on the 18th of October. Now he's in detention again, and his process of being returned to France will be expedited. But are the French going to keep him in custody again? I doubt it. I mean, he could conceivably come back again.
It's unbelievable, Mark White. It's simply unbelievable. If it wasn't such a farce, it would be amusing. But it's hard to understand how this government, really of both stripes, can't get control of our southern border.
Well, this is the big problem, isn't it? And that is the issue. The Conservatives before did no better. OK, they had the Rwanda deterrent scheme. We'll never know if that would have worked because they could never get it off the ground because legal challenge after legal challenge just kept that in abeyance until, of course, Rishi Sunak called an election before it even got the chance to be tested, so we'll never know. And of course, Keir Starmer took a completely different approach. It was to be all about law enforcement. Well, that didn't work. So he's now scrambling about looking for deterrents. But what's he come up with? A very weak deterrent that is only seeing so far 42 migrants who've come across the channel returned to France. And remember, we've taken about 20 odd back in from France over that same time period. And I'm detecting no appetite really amongst the French to expand this significantly. So it really would be a deterrent. We're only talking about small numbers going back to France. The people smugglers are just going to tell any migrant the chances of you actually being returned back across the channel are very slim indeed.
I don't want to correct you, Mark Wyatt, but should it be 41, not 42 now? Or have you included the one who's come back again, like this yo-yo migrant?
Yeah. You're quite right, Chris. I'm sure that a few more have gone since the government told us the last time, but it will be a modest number. I mean, less than 100, without a doubt, which 3 months effectively into the operationalisation of this scheme is pretty pathetic.
Well, Mark White, great to see you. Thank you for your great reporting, and we'll see you in the next hour. Thank you. With me in the studio now is our senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson. Nigel Nelson, surely it's time to bring back the Rwanda scheme, something to try and deter this individual from crisscrossing at will, crossing the channel.
Well, take Rwanda. We spent £700 million on it, which the Rwandans were very pleased about. Not one person was returned compulsorily to Rwanda, even if it had been geared up to several hundred. We were looking at a price tag of about 10 billion, with absolutely no evidence it would ever have deterred anybody. But the senior official in the Home Office refused to sign it off as value for money for that reason, because there was no evidence it would deter people.
But why not try it? Was it wrong for Sir Keir Starmer to axe it on day 2 of his government? I was there when he axed it in response to... You were there too in the press conference. He axed it, didn't he? I thought, if it's all the money's being spent, 400 million of our money spent in Rwanda, why not see if it might work? Because, frankly, we all want this crisis to end.
Because it would have cost 10 billion quid. Right. And it was such a huge cost. We didn't know the cost under the Tories. Yvette Cooper, when she was Home Secretary, saw those costs, and the Tories have never said...
Smash the gangs ain't working either. What would you do if you were Prime Minister?
On the Smash the Gangs, first of all, the idea that we're going to stop it in its tracks isn't going to happen. On the Smash the Gangs thing, yes, they are doing things, but obviously they're not stopping everyone. In Bulgaria, the National Crime Agency has smashed a gang which was bringing 65 boats across to France.
Nigel Nelson, thank you. And across now live to Sheffield Crown Court, where a 15-year-old Mohammed Umar Khan is being sentenced for the murder of Harvey Wilgoose.
By you was a form of pretence to ward off any prospective attack upon you. Having regard to the fact that you had brought a knife into school that morning, I am satisfied that that theory should be rejected. At 11:52, whilst Harvey was in the Damascus room, you left the science classroom. Ms. Staniforth then asked you about the incident with Harvey. You simply shrugged. She told you to go to lunch and to avoid him. Ms. Staniforth spoke to Harvey again by telephone at 12:05 when he was still in the Damascus room. He appeared to her to be in good spirits. At 12:10, the lunch break began. You made your way to the dining area, which ran alongside the central courtyard. At around the same time, Harvey was making his way along the external footpath from the Damascus room to that courtyard. In the dining area, you spoke to another boy who later described the conversation which he had had with you at that time. He said that you had both been talking about Harvey because you had been mad at him, and that you had then suddenly started to talk about a knife. His evidence was that he had told you to give the knife to him before you did something stupid, but that you had not listened to him. Together with that friend, you walked from the dining area out into the courtyard. I cannot be sure that you had seen and made a beeline for Harvey, bearing in mind the number of people present in both the dining area and the courtyard at that time. Once in the courtyard, however, you saw Harvey walking towards you. The CCTV footage records your interaction with him. His back was to the camera. You were facing it. It appears that Harvey placed his hand on your right arm and that he said something to you. On the evidence of another pupil, which I accept, a few minutes earlier, Harvey had informed him that if you were to try anything, he, Harvey, would, quotes, smash you all over, close quotes. You took the knife which you had brought to school that day out of your left pocket, passed it to your right hand, and stabbed Harvey in the chest twice. At trial, Dr. Lund, the pathologist, explained that the force which you used was severe, as indicated by the fact that your knife had cut through the full thickness of one of Harvey's ribs. As Harvey backed away, you advanced towards him, across the courtyard, before returning to your original position, gesturing at him and appearing to shout something. Harvey ran towards you, and you were seen to have advanced again, dancing on your feet and waving the knife. Harvey again backed away. 49 seconds after you had stabbed him, he collapsed on the ground. Meanwhile, still holding the knife, you went back into the dining area, causing other pupils to run in fear and panic. You were approached by 2 members of staff who told you to put the knife down, but you did not do so. Having been alerted to the incident by a group of older boys, Mr. Davis ran to the scene, passing Harvey in the courtyard, who was by then being treated by other members of staff. When he reached the dining area, he encountered you, still holding the knife, and saying, "You know I can't control it." In an act of considerable bravery, Mr. Davis held out his hand and took the knife from you. At the same time, the head teacher, Mr. Sean Pender, placed his arm around your shoulder and took you to his office. Whilst awaiting the arrival of the police, you told him, "I'm not right in the head. My mum doesn't look after me right. I've stabbed him," saying that you had stabbed Harvey once or twice. You also told Mr. Pender that you had argued with Harvey during the lesson before the lunch break and that he had grabbed you whilst laughing at you. You said that you had been carrying a knife for protection and because of the lockdown incident, and that you had been followed over the weekend and were scared of being jumped outside school. You also told him that you had been threatened by an associate of boy X. When paramedics arrived, less than 10 minutes after you had stabbed him, Harvey was not breathing and had no pulse. A large volume of blood was found in his chest. Notwithstanding the valiant efforts of the paramedics and air ambulance crew over the next hour, it was not possible to save his life. By the time of the tragic events which I have described, you had had a long-standing interest in weapons. Found on your telephone by the police were photographs of you posing with a variety of them, including other hunting-style knives, a machete and a hammer, the earliest of which dating back to April 2024. Your internet search history revealed that since at least September 2024, you had been using search terms such as zombie killer knife, dagger, pocket knife, and machete. In December 2024, your mother had contacted the school, having found an axe in your bag. When a police officer visited you at home on the 27th of December, you told him untruthfully that you knew nothing about it. He advised you about the dangers of carrying weapons, advice which you ignored. Prior to the 3rd of February 2025, there had been at least one other occasion on which you had been in possession of a weapon, a knife, on school premises, captured in a video clip and in photographs. Notwithstanding all of this, throughout your trial, you sought to minimise the extent of your interest and gave explanations for the way in which photographs of weapons had come to be on your phone, which were, put simply, not believable. Over the period spanning November 2024 and January 2025, there had been 3 separate incidents in which you had become angry and aggressive towards a person and or property at school, including on the day of lockdown. Other records indicate your long-standing inability to manage your anger. I am now going to explain the sentences which you will receive for your crimes. In doing so, I have to set out the information and material which I have considered and the legal principles which I must apply. I shall try to make that explanation as straightforward as I can. Shortly after this hearing, you will have the opportunity to speak to your barristers, who will help you to understand anything about which you are unclear. You will also be able to read my sentencing remarks in your own time. I have given very careful consideration to the pre-sentence report which has been prepared by the Youth Justice team, to the separate statement which that team has provided, to the helpful and detailed written notes on sentence and oral submissions received from the prosecution and the defence, and to the material to which they have referred. The sentence for murder is fixed by law. The law treats children and young people differently from adults. You were under the age of 18 at the time of your offending. Under Section 259 of the Sentencing Act 2020, to which I shall refer as the 2020 Act, I must sentence you to what is known as detention during His Majesty's pleasure. That means a life sentence in a secure place imposed on a person who commits the offence of murder when himself a child. Section 322 of the 2020 Act requires me to decide the minimum term which you must spend in detention before you can be considered by the parole board for release on licence. It is the parole board which decides whether a person who is in custody is safe to be released. It is important that you and the public understand that a minimum term means just that. It is the shortest period which you must spend in custody before you can be considered for release. But there is no guarantee that you will in fact be released at the end of that period or at any later time. It is only if and when the parole board decides that you are fit to be released that you will be released, and you will then remain subject to licence for the rest of your life. A licence requires you to comply with certain conditions or rules. If you offend again or fail to comply in any other way with the conditions or rules of your licence, you may be recalled to continue your life sentence. It is in that way that a life sentence protects the public for the future. In order to decide the appropriate minimum term, I must take into account the seriousness of your offence and the period which you have already spent on remand in custody. When considering the seriousness of your offence, I must have regard to the general principles set out in Schedule 21 to the 2020 Act, and to any Sentencing Council guidelines which are relevant to your case and are not incompatible with those principles. In this case, I must have regard to the Sentencing Council's guideline on sentencing children and young people, and in particular to sections 1 and 4 of that guideline. I must also bear in mind the factors to be considered when assessing the culpability of a young offender, that is, the responsibility which he bears for his offence, as set out in paragraph 17 of section 14 of the Judicial College publication entitled Child Defendants in the Crown Court, published in June 2025. You accept that you took the knife into school and intended to have it available to use as a weapon, albeit, you said, for protection, having experienced earlier threats and acts of violence. You then used that knife to commit Harvey's murder. That means that paragraph 5A of Schedule 21 to the 2020 Act applies in this case. That paragraph sets out the appropriate starting point for the minimum term for a person aged 15, which, as counsel agree, is 17 years. Deciding the appropriate starting point is the beginning of the process. That starting point is not to be applied in a rigid way without thought. It is to be applied flexibly in order to achieve a just result in the particular case. Having identified it, I must consider whether it is appropriate to adjust it upwards or downwards. I must take account of all relevant aggravating and mitigating factors, meaning all those things which make your offending worse and all those things which count in your favour, in order to reach a sentence which is appropriate in all the circumstances of this case. That sentence will impose the shortest possible minimum term which reflects the seriousness of your offence. When assessing your culpability, I must reflect on and make all appropriate allowances for your developmental age, which may be the same as, or higher or lower than, your actual age, and the level of your maturity. Those principles have been summarised in a number of cases, most recently in a case known as Crown and BGI and CMB, 2024 EWCA Crim 1591, and I shall now explain how they apply to you on the facts of this case. A non-exhaustive list of aggravating and mitigating factors is set out at paragraphs 9 and 10 of Schedule 21 to the 2020 Act. I shall take account of all relevant factors, so far as I have not already done so when determining the correct starting point. I first set out all of the aggravating factors in your case. I do not consider that your offence involved a significant degree of planning or premeditation. The prosecution does not suggest that you came to school that morning intending to kill or cause serious injury to Harvey. But that is not to say that you acted on the spur of the moment when you were in the courtyard. On the evidence given by a number of witnesses, which I have already summarised, I am sure that by the time of the science lesson on the 3rd of February, you had decided that, should the need as you saw it arise, you would use your knife on Harvey, a knife which, in your words, you had bought because it was scary. Your history of carrying weapons, including on school grounds, the fact that your offence took place on school premises, and the fact that numerous pupils and teachers were present at the time are all aggravating factors in this case. Turning to mitigating factors, the prosecution case is not that you intended to kill Harvey, but, it says, the severe force which you used, as explained by Dr. Lum, and the fact that you stabbed Harvey twice in his chest indicates the high degree of bodily harm which you intended to cause him. Having regard to all of that evidence and the CCTV footage, I am sure that that is the correct analysis. Whilst your premeditation was not long-standing, it cannot be said that it was lacking altogether. Having come to school with a knife, your behaviour and comments to others from the time of your science class onwards indicate some premeditation at that point. Having considered that evidence and the CCTV footage with care, in the context of your earlier acts of aggression and the available psychiatric evidence, I am also sure that you did not act to any extent in self-defence or in fear of violence. Accepting that he might have made some provocative comment towards you or behaved in a hostile way, it was not, I am satisfied, at a level which indicated to you that Harvey posed any real threat at that time, or which provides any mitigation for what followed. I am also satisfied that, by the point at which you came to stab him, you were the aggressor, and that you acted in hurt and anger at what you considered to be his betrayal of your friendship. I bear in mind your young age at the time of your offence, already reflected in the starting point which I have selected. I must also take account of everything which is known about your mental and emotional development which might have lowered your culpability. The psychiatric evidence received at trial referred to evidence of physical and emotional abuse and neglect in your home life, including a lack of food and, in the psychiatrist's words, excessive physical punishment. Both psychiatrists considered there to be a picture of oppositional behaviour and defiance more obvious in school, and that if you had had a typical level of parenting, with appropriate boundaries and discipline, you would have had better emotional regulation, been less likely to have had attachment difficulties, and had improved emotional resilience and self-esteem. The incidents of aggression in the weeks and months prior to your offending, of which the jury also heard evidence, were said to be examples of your difficulties in controlling your emotions, including your anger. The consultant clinical psychologists agreed that your intellectual abilities fell within the very low average range, with particular weaknesses in understanding language and the speed at which you process it. That is thought likely to have resulted from negative early experiences. Nevertheless, Dr. Forster's view was that you did not have any communication issues. He noted that whilst your verbal comprehension and processing speeds were outside normal limits, that was not to an extent which would significantly impair your ability to communicate or comprehend under normal conditions, though in high-pressure situations, your ability to understand and communicate might be more limited. I have also borne in mind the report and observations of the intermediary who helped you throughout your trial and does so again today. having watched you give evidence over a lengthy period at trial, and acknowledging that you have had the benefit of her assistance, I do not consider that your ability to communicate or understand is reduced to any significant extent. I have had regard to your very difficult family circumstances and upbringing, to your kidney condition and its late diagnosis, the way in which it is managed, and the bullying which you have encountered as a result, and to the separate racist bullying which you have endured. In assessing your culpability, I have taken account of all of those matters and of the way in which you came across at trial. I acknowledge the inherent vulnerability of a person of your age. I acknowledge that adverse childhood experiences and educational difficulties or disruption can affect negatively the development of adult thought processes. As for the offence itself, the incident was short-lived and, until a relatively short time beforehand, unplanned. Nevertheless, you stabbed Harvey forcefully twice in his heart. You were at that time aware of and had recently been advised about the dangers of carrying a knife. I am satisfied that you understood them. Taking full account of everything which I have observed and read, I am also satisfied that your emotional maturity and development at the time of your offence were those of a typical boy of 14, that is below your actual age. In addition to your developmental age and maturity, I bear in mind the evidence of a degree of provocation by Harvey in the context of your knowledge and experience of earlier violent conduct and threats made by certain of his friends, the absence of any prior convictions, the informal role as a carer for your younger siblings, one of whom particularly vulnerable, which you have undertaken from a young age, in the context of your mother's poor mental health and your father's frequent absence from the home, and a degree of remorse. I also bear in mind the mature and positive approach which you have adopted whilst on remand. The Youth Justice Team reports that you are known as being well-mannered and well-liked. You have been commended for your good behaviour and twice awarded the title Unit Champion. You enjoy enhanced incentives and earned privileges status, having received 52 positive comments for your engagement, your encouragement of peers to follow instruction, your assistance to staff, and your mature attitude to conflict. You are working in a trusted position, which is said to highlight your character and proactive approach, and have indicated a desire to work towards gaining GCSEs and, ultimately, a professional qualification. I commend you for all of that, and I hope that you will continue to build on the efforts which you have clearly been making towards rehabilitation. Taking account of all of the aggravating and mitigating factors to which I have referred, and the need to impose the shortest minimum term which is consistent with your welfare and necessary rehabilitation, I consider that the appropriate minimum term in your case is one of 16 years, from which the time which you have already spent on remand will be deducted, as I shall explain shortly. Your offence of murder was committed with the knife to the possession of which, on school premises, you pleaded guilty. That latter offence formed part of the same sequence of events. In those circumstances, and having regard to the sentence which I have passed for murder and to your offending as a whole, I consider that it would not be just or proportionate to impose any separate penalty for the lesser offence, and I do not do so. That means that your conviction for that offence will not extend the minimum term which I have imposed for murder. For an offender who was 15 at the time of his conviction, Section 366 of the 2020 Act requires the court to make a parenting order in respect of the offender's parent or guardian if it is satisfied that the order would be desirable in the interests of preventing the offender from committing any further offence. No such order is recommended by the Youth Justice Team, and having regard to the length of the minimum term which I have imposed for murder and your family circumstances, I am not satisfied that such an order is desirable in the interests of preventing your commission of any further offence. Stand up, please, Umar. I shall now summarise the sentence which you will receive and what it means for you. For the murder of Harvey Wilgoose, I pass the only sentence which the law allows me to pass for someone of your age. That is detention during His Majesty's pleasure. You will remain in secure custody until the parole board decides that you are suitable to be considered for release. The shortest period of time during which you must remain in custody is 16 years, less the number of days which you have spent on remand. I have been told that that period is agreed to be 259 days. Therefore, the minimum term which I impose in your case is 15 years and 106 days. I remind you that there is no guarantee that you will in fact be released at the end of that period or at any later time, and that if and when you are released, you will remain subject to licence for the rest of your life and may be recalled to continue your life sentence if you reoffend or fail to comply in any other way with the conditions of your licence. As you have been convicted by a jury of the offence of murder, no sentence will be passed on the lesser offence of manslaughter to which you pleaded guilty at an earlier stage. That offence will lie on the file, meaning that it cannot be reopened without the permission of this court or of the Court of Appeal. For your possession of a knife on school premises, you will receive no separate penalty. There are two related orders to be made. A victim surcharge will be imposed in the sum of £41 and a collection order made. That surcharge is fixed by law, takes account of your age at the time of your offence, and is used to fund organisations which support victims and witnesses. I order the forfeiture and destruction of the knife. Your legal team will come to see you before you begin your sentence. Please go with the dock officer, Umar.
That's Mohammed Umar Khan, has been sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 16 years for the murder of Harvey Wilgoose at Sheffield Crown Court today. Harvey Wilgoose, was also 15, died when he was stabbed in the heart with a hunting knife at All Saints Catholic High School on Monday, the 3rd of February. The jury in a month-long trial was told that Harvey was attacked following a confrontation between the pair during a lesson earlier that day. Our reporter Anna Riley has looked at the effect of Harvey's murder on the community.
When Harvey Wilgoose went into school, he tragically never came home. This is the terrifying moment after the 15-year-old was stabbed to death with a knife by a fellow pupil. CCTV shows him waving the weapon around the canteen at lunchtime as other children ran for safety. Harvey's murder left the community in mourning. Flowers were laid in tribute outside the Sheffield High School. Shirts and banners were displayed near his beloved football club. Hundreds attended Harvey's funeral to pay their respects. His family want Harvey to be remembered for who he was.
I want him to be known as the kid he were. I hate that saying, Harvey Wilgoose, the pupil that was stabbed to death at school. He'd hate that. I want him to be remembered as the fun-loving kid, cheeky chappy, sociable kid that he were. He's just left a big empty hole.
For investigators, the murder trial brought home the devastating consequences of knife crime and its terrible impact.
Knives are not a status symbol. It's not about power and influence. It's just a dangerous item, and they have no place in schools or in society. There's something very different about the murder of a child, and I think particularly in this case the facts were so easy to relate to from your own lives. I've got children, a lot of the investigation team have got children, and obviously when you drop them off at school you expect them to be safe.
Lives, not knives. 9 months on from his death, those that know and love Harvey continue their campaign. They want an end to knife crime so that other communities don't suffer the same tragedy. Anna Riley, GB News.
And we'll bring you more updates on that sentencing when we have it. Now to politics. Time for an interesting development in the Commons today. Reform leader Nigel Farage has gone on strike. Yes, really, the Reform leader spent PMQs in a public gallery about 6 feet from where I was sitting, watching on as a spectator in protest. The Reform leader said this: "Every week at PMQs, I am attacked by the PM and Labour MPs, but I have no right of reply. I am just a mere spectator." Farage's critics say that as leader of a party with 5 MPs, he's not entitled to a question at every time Prime Minister's question is held. We're joined now by a former Labour advisor and the director of the Social Market Foundation, Theo Bertram. Theo Bertram, is that a childish strop, or has he got a point?
He has got a point. It may still be a childish strop, but he has got a point. In the last year, since Kemi Badenoch became leader, she's had 200 questions at PMQs. Ed Davies had 70, and Nigel Farage has had just 6. Now, at the moment, when there was a poll recently of young people, and 6 out of 10 young people said they felt politics, the democracy, they felt out of touch with democracy, that they were ignored by democracy. And we know that PMQs is the window onto democracy for most people. 8 out of 10 people, if you believe them, say they watch PMQs regularly. And if they're not seeing Nigel Farage in that chamber, then you could see why they might feel disaffected and not included. So I think there is a duty, an obligation on the Speaker to try and call Nigel Farage a bit more often so that we get some of that representation and also some of that scrutiny.
And the scrutiny maybe what it doesn't want, because we're being told by Labour and the Tories no one scrutinises the reform policies enough. Being forced to ask 2 questions a week, having a debate with the Prime Minister, could be helpful to his critics in pouring a further light on what he's up to.
Well, I think we have quite a lot of scrutiny and analysis of some of Nigel Farage's policies, for example, immigration and crime. But I think we probably know less about what does he want to do on health, what does he want to do on education, social care, pensions. There's a whole lot of other things.
Foreign affairs, I mean, it's not talked about.
So I think the thing about PMQs is it would give the Prime Minister a chance to also go back and press him a little, and that might start to shine a light on what those policies are.
What would other leaders say? What would the leader of the Greens say? They may then want their 2 every week. And what about other people? Because the point of PMQs is it's a lottery, it's drawn out of a hat, it's any backbencher can ask the questions after the 6 from the Leader of the Opposition and 2 from the Lib Dems.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think if we were going to do this in a formal and fair way, then we could have a commission. We've had these in the past where we've reviewed how PMQs works. The trouble is those things take a long period of time. And one way of doing it, though, would be we have these things called e-petitions, where if you have 100,000 people that sign, then they can have this petition debated in the Commons. You could imagine the Speaker having some questions where if you've got 100,000 people say this person should be called, then they get to be called. And that would probably mean reform will call. Maybe occasionally the Greens, but probably being reform. But doing all of that take years to get to that sort of process. And in the meantime, I think the simplest solution is just if the Speaker just calls Nigel Farage
a bit more often. Now, Nigel Farage told me he saw his number 2 there, Richard Tice, bobbing up and down trying to get called. The Speaker didn't call him. Now, the Speaker is allowed to call people who aren't on the list of questioners. So couldn't the Speaker just simply call him more often?
Yeah, so there's 2 ways that an average Joe MP can be called. One is they're lucky enough to come out the ballot, but that's a very slim chance.
Yep.
And then the other way is the Speaker just calls them. He's got that discretion. So that's the simplest, quickest way of solving the problem.
Is he being a crybaby? I mean, certainly the Tories are saying he's now literally a spectator, while the job of opposition is carried out by the Tory party.
He's chosen to be a spectator today. I think it's probably a step too far to go and sit behind the screen. I get why it's good for the sort of getting the story elevated, but I think he really should be in the chamber and he should be bobbing up and down. And then he can complain he's not being called.
Spent long enough trying to be an MP. Why can't he just go and do his job? I think what frustrates him is when he was an MEP in Strasbourg, he knew when he was speaking, he knew when his 4 minutes was, and that meant he could turn up, deliver his 4 minutes, attack Jean-Claude Lord Juncker or Herman van Rompuy, get all the clicks on social media and go off for dinner. But you have to wait there for a long time, don't you, in these debates to get called?
Well, I think if he and his MPs are in training to be the next government, they're going to have to get used to sitting on benches and waiting a long time and responding. It's not always your
discipline.
own way.
It's a bit boring, isn't it, for them?
But I mean, a lot of politics and good policy is boring, but it's important work. And so I think if he was there, if he gets 2 questions, at least we get to see a bit more scrutiny and analysis.
Well, wait and see, shall we? I mean, he's seeing the Speaker in 2 days' time. What's your advice for the Speaker?
You should listen to him. I mean, the Speaker knows what the rules are, but I think he should also consider the fact that so many young people feel that the democracy isn't working for them. And we do need to do something about that.
Well, Thea Bertram, it's great to see you from the Social Market Foundation. We'll get Nigel Nelson's response later, the old wizard lobby hack behind me, rump thing, as Thea was speaking. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. I'm Christopher Hope, not Martin Daubney, but still to come now and 6 o'clock. Suella Braben on Jess Phillips, it was called resign over the Grooming gas scandal. We're speaking to her live. Stay tuned.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. The M48 has a weight restriction for vehicles over 7.5 tonnes. In Rochdale, a vehicle fire on the M62 westbound between junctions 22 and 21 causes delays, with 1 lane closed. Southbound lanes are restricted on the A1 near Wakefield with 10-minute delays. Congestion on the A38 northbound in Staffordshire causes disruptions. In Northamptonshire, a broken-down vehicle closes lanes on the M1 southbound entry slip at junction 15A. An incident on the M1 in Bedfordshire between junctions 12 and 13 causes 2-lane closures, with 50-minute delays expected. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
There's 2 weeks remaining in our latest, greatest giveaway. You could be in the driving seat of this Benamar Primera motorhome. This luxurious home from home comes with all the mod cons. Plus, you can use it with your current driving licence. We'll also boost your bank account with a whopping £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like. It only takes 1 entry to become a winner. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. 1 entry costs £2.50 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock, only on GB News.
Good afternoon, it's 4 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News with me, Christopher Hope, broadcasting live across the UK with all the very latest news, debate and analysis until 6 p.m. Here's what's coming up on the show today. Jim Gamble has become the second candidate to withdraw from leading the government's grooming gangs inquiry, just days after social worker Annie Hudson pulled out. That comes as Sir Keir Starmer defends his handling of the probe after Kemi Badenoch accused him of hanging his head in shame.
The inquiry is not and will never be watered down. Its scope will not change. It will examine the ethnicity and religion of the offenders, and we will find the right person to chair the inquiry.
Well, in a letter to the Home Secretary, Jim Gamble has cited a toxic environment behind his reason for removing himself from this role. More survivors telling GB News they're looking for a judge to lead this inquiry.
Elsewhere, small boat arrivals hit a new high, and one migrant sent back to France has returned by small boat. You couldn't make it up, fueling more claims the government's lost control of our southern border. Rachel Reeves targets Britain's high earners, with lawyers, GPs and accountants set to face higher taxes under plans to raise billions for the Treasury at next month's budget. But is this fair?
Well, Rachel Reeves has a black hole of around £30 billion to fill. That budget coming at the end of November, likely to be painful.
Meanwhile, the King and Queen today will begin their state visit to the Holy See, where the King will be the first British monarch to pray with the Pope in 500 years. But is their royal trip being overshadowed by Prince Andrew? And Christmas comes early in Birmingham, where a 65-foot tree has gone up 2 months before the big day, leaving locals divided. Is this marvellous festive spirit, or too much too soon? I want to hear from you, of course. Send me your views and post your comments by visiting gbnews.com/your say. But now it's time for the news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Chris, thank you very much. That breaking news to start with, that Mohammed Umar Khan has been sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 16 years for the murder of teenager Harvey Wilgoose at their school. The 15-year-old stabbed Harvey in the heart with a hunting knife at All Saints Catholic High School in February. The jury, in a month-long trial, was told that 15-year-old Harvey was attacked following a confrontation between the pair during a lesson earlier that day. While investigating the murder, police found photographs of Khan posing with hunting-style knives and a hammer. His internet search history included terms such as zombie killer knife, the judge added. Elsewhere, GB News can confirm the number of migrants crossing the Channel has already surpassed the total for the whole of last year. 2 Border Force vessels arrived in Dover this afternoon, carrying around 150 people, taking this year's total to 36,886. That's 70 more than in all of last year. Senior security sources say it's deeply concerning for ministers, with more than 2 months still left in the year. Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood reacted to the latest figures, saying the previous government left our borders in crisis and we are still living with the consequences. These figures are shameful. The British people deserve better. The Prime Minister has come under fire after 4 survivors quit the government's grooming gangs inquiry, accusing officials of creating a toxic environment and watering it down. At Prime Minister's questions, Kemi Badenoch accused the government of a cover-up, saying survivors feel dismissed and ignored.
They voted against the national inquiry 3 times, so the victims don't believe them. They can say no as much as they like. It is on the record. They don't like it, but it's true. Now, one of the victims has quit. They believe that the inquiry will downplay the racial and religious motivations behind their abuse. Aren't the victims right when they call it a cover-up?
But Sir Keir Starmer hit back, insisting the inquiry will not be watered down and will examine the ethnicity and religion of offenders in full.
Survivors have been ignored for many years, including by the state that, of course, is supposed to protect them. We owe it to them and to Fiona and to the country to answer the concerns that they have raised. The inquiry is not and will never be watered down. Its scope will not change. It will examine the ethnicity and religion of the offenders, and we will find the right person to chair the inquiry.
Meanwhile, another candidate to chair the grooming gang's inquiry has pulled out of the process, telling the Home Secretary the appointment process has been defined more by the vested interests of some, as well as political opportunism and point scoring. Jim Gamble was one of 2 people named in reports as a potential option to lead the inquiry. Another, Annie Hudson, withdrew yesterday. The Home Office says it's disappointed that both have pulled out. A migrant sent to France under the government's new one-in, one-out scheme has returned to the UK by small boat, saying he feared for his life in France. The man, now in immigration detention, claims he was trafficked and abused by smugglers and says he didn't feel safe after being sent back. Human rights groups say others removed under the scheme have also faced violence and exploitation, but the Home Office insists anyone who re-enters the UK illegally will be removed. A passport-forging criminal gang and firm of financiers have been hit with sanctions in a government crackdown on groups accused of propping up the people smuggling trade. The Balkan-based network is now banned from travelling to the UK and cut off from its finances. Sir Keir Starmer says it's another warning that gangs who trade in human suffering will face the full force of the UK's sanctions regime. Elsewhere, food and drinks prices in the UK are increasing at their slowest rate in more than a year, while overall inflation remains unchanged for the 3rd month in a row. Month on month, the cost of food and non-alcoholic drinks edged down slightly in September, the first fall since May last year. The ONS said this was likely to have been driven by increased sales and discounting by retailers. The UK inflation rate for all items remained stable at the lower than expected 3.8% in the year to September. Chancellor Rachel Reeves said she was not satisfied with the numbers on inflation, while Shadow Chancellor Mel Stride said it was pushing up the cost of living.
3.8% is twice the Bank of England's target. It's twice what the government inherited on the day of the last general election. And what it means, of course, is higher prices for people in their shopping baskets. We know that food inflation is running at well over 4%. And this is down to this government's choices.
And in Dublin, 5 men have been charged with public order offences after violent scenes outside a hotel housing asylum seekers. Irish police were pelted with bricks, fireworks and missiles. A van was set on fire during the unrest at the City West Hotel. Police Commissioner Justin Kelly described the scenes as thuggery and vowed to bring those responsible to justice. It's the 2nd night of protests outside the hotel. All 5 men were remanded on bail with various conditions, including that they all stay away from City West Hotel. Now, the protests outside the hotel came after an alleged sexual assault on a girl in the vicinity in the early hours of Monday morning. Those are the latest headlines. For now, more in half an hour.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of the markets. The pound buying you $1.3323 and €1.1501. The price of gold, £3,045 and 4 pence per ounce. The FTSE 100's at 9,516 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
It's been yet another dramatic day for the grooming gang inquiry, yet to start, of course. Earlier today, the former police officer Jim Gamble pulled out of running to become the chair of the grooming inquiry. The troubled inquiry dominated Prime Minister's questions and things got heated.
Labour never wanted this inquiry. We demanded it. It has been Labour-run councils, Trafford, Bradford, Blackpool, that tried to suppress the truth. It is Labour ministers attacking the victims. We're standing up for them. And how is it, Mr. Speaker, how is it that whether it is rape or Chinese espionage, when he's in a position to do something about it, it's always someone else's fault?
Mr. Speaker, my priorities are listening to and standing up for the survivors. That's why we're doing the work on the inquiry. That's why we've reopened the criminal cases, why we brought in mandatory reporting. But I would gently remind them they had 14 years in office.
OK, all that comes as Jess Phillips, the safeguarding minister, is facing calls to resign from some victims, with GB News revealing last night that a fourth survivor had quit a panel advising the national inquiry. Joining me now, of course, is GB News' national reporter, Charlie Peters. Charlie, another day, it seems to be unravelling as we speak, the attempt to bring justice for those victims.
Yes, Chris, and for both of the prospective candidates for the inquiry to have now pulled out is very negative news for the government, but also for many of the survivors, both on the panel and off it, who were hoping for process and for them really to have the choice on who is the chair and who is removed from the process. Not that it would be done through what Jim Gamble is referring to today as a toxic environment. The former police officer has published a letter on X describing his reasons for quitting, and he said that his decision is reinforced by that highly charged and toxic environment surrounded and influenced the appointment process and the impact this has had on those closest to me. He also said that he made a commitment that if there was a lack of a consensus of trust from victims and survivors, that he would not proceed. And he said, I must now be true to my word. He said victims and survivors who have been let down so often in the past deserve better than to be used as leverage for short-term gain by anyone. And I think, Chris, we can see that as a bit of a subtle attack at politicians who have been engaging in political point scoring, as some critics have described it, over this issue. And we just heard that clip you showed of PMQs earlier today, some of the arguments between Kemi Badenoch and the Leader of the Opposition. Now, Kemi Badenoch did also call for the Safeguarding Minister, Jess Phillips, to resign, which could be argued is a legitimate thing for her to call for, because we have survivors like Fiona Goddard and others saying that she said they were making lies or claims about the inquiry process and what they had been asked. Because, crucially, yesterday, during an urgent question, Jess Phillips said that there was misinformation being spread about whether the scope of the inquiry had expanded. We then published a letter sent to the survivors which specifically asked and explicitly asked, should the inquiry look beyond grooming gangs? But curiously, Kemi Badenoch did not challenge the Labour benches or the Prime Minister on that point specifically. But it does seem that the political point scoring has also attracted the criticism of Jim Gamble, now withdrawing himself.
Yeah.
But earlier this afternoon, Chris, I did speak with that survivor, Jessica, the fourth survivor who removed herself from the process last night. She's actually offered an olive branch to the government, saying that she would be open to rejoining the panel if new prospective chairs were proposed. And she also said she was hoping that a judge might come forward, an option that the government has poured some doubt on. Here's what she had to say to us.
I would be open into rejoining the panel, but it's definitely going to have to be done the right way with the right people. It's going to take a lot to get that trust back. We have such little trust anyway in these people. So to rejoin the panel, it's going to take a lot. They need to relook at their potential chairs, number one. I think they need to allow all survivors to attend all meetings, not just pick and choose who they want in the meetings because of a time frame.
Well, Jessica's voice has been altered to help protect her anonymity. And a longer interview that will be shared on the GB News website, she expressed some of the frustrations she felt about this process, but was now hoping it could get back on track and that more people could engage with this process, because we do need this inquiry, she said. Thanks, Chris.
Oh. We do. Look, Charlie Peters, thank you for your great reporting, and do come up with us for the next hour on this important story. We're speaking now in the studio here at GB News Westminster with Natalie Fleet, the Labour MP for Bolsover and a member of the Women and Equalities Committee. Natalie Fleet, thank you for joining us. Should Jess Phillips resign?
No, absolutely not. I don't think we've ever had a more powerful advocate for women. One of the reasons that I'm an MP is because of her. I'm like, Jess, I can't do this. Nobody wants all of the many things they've called me in Parliament. And she's like, that's why we need you in Parliament. And she gets it. I understand that people don't trust government. I understand that there are people that are really concerned about this inquiry and the route it's taking, but I have complete faith in it. You know, yesterday in Parliament, Jess was talking to us about how determined she was, that despite it being politically unpopular, we're waiting to get the right chair with a proper independent inquiry that doesn't have any political interference, so that there can't be a whitewash. If there is a person in Parliament that understands how important this inquiry is and that it is an absolute success, it's Jess Phillips.
So why isn't it working? Why do you have some of these victims advising the establishing of the inquiry saying she should resign? I mean, why is that happening? Because she is someone whose history is working with abused women. I mean, before she's MP, she's working in communities in the West Midlands. And why is she apparently getting it wrong?
So there are people who are in a similar position to me. I've decided to go into Parliament because that's where I think you get the most change.
Because you were groomed too, aged 15.
Yeah, and if I could just drop this in, yesterday the government made a law, finally passed the law after a campaign that I ran, that said that if you rape a woman, you can no longer have access to the child conceived by rape. That's going to protect mothers and their children. I got to do that because I was sat on the government benches as a survivor that they made sure was there, and we got a Prime Minister that supports violence against women and girls being absolutely halved.
So as a victim yourself, do you understand... it's amazing what you've done now, of course, but as a victim yourself, do you understand why some of the other victims of this grooming gangs scandal have lost faith in the process?
I absolutely understand. So there are other survivors. Every survivor has a different opinion, but one survivor told me that I should be ashamed to be part of the government. I'm not. I believe in the government, I believe in the Prime Minister, and I believe in Jess. But I also see where victims and survivors that have been let down by the state for so long, social worker, teacher, doctor, judge, it doesn't matter who you are, we have all been let down. And let's not forget that in my case, my daughter is 25 years old. We've gone from these people saying to me, Natalie, you have ruined your life and you have ruined the life of your child, to the state saying, we're sorry, we see you, we are going to protect you, and we're going to right this historic wrong. Now, I get why people are frustrated that this is taking time, but I also understand that it takes time to get the right chair. I also see that any kind of victim sees any kind of delay, and they are instinctively looking to be screwed over again.
They've been let down for so long.
That's all they've ever known.
They've been let down for so long. I mean, should it be a judge? We heard from the PM in PMQ say it won't be judge-led because you can't run concurrent criminal inquiries at the same time, and it will take too long. So therefore it won't be a judge, but it seems that they want to judge some of the victims.
Some of the victims, and there are others that think that they have had their children removed or they've been questioned by judges, and they don't trust judges either. As long as it's independent, it completely has my backing. Now, I have said many times that I have full faith in this inquiry. What I hate to see in this area now is the way that the Tories are using us in the way that they are.
Well, they fell completely on this.
Kemi Badenoch, she had the power to protect us and do something about us, and instead she did nothing when she was Women and Equalities Minister. And today, now she can use these victims to throw rocks at the government. She does so.
And just as the final point to the GBNews viewers do raise for this, the go slow on this isn't caused because of fear of offending the predominantly Pakistani community who are involved in it, according to the report by Louise Casey. It's not a concern about that.
The Tories did the J report. They had 2 chairs leave. We want to make sure that we get the right chair, and that is a lot quicker than the J report. But then, whenever there are recommendations, we will implement them. The opposite to the way that the Tories ignored the recommendations of the J report.
Well, Natalie Fleet, Labour MP for Bolsover, thank you for joining us today on GB News, and well done on your change in the law to protect people like yourself and victims. Thank you.
Thank you.
OK, moving on now. We've got an indication today on how the Chancellor is planning to close the fiscal black hole. Rachel Reeves is reportedly planning a tax raid on solicitors, GPs and accountants who use limited liability partnerships, which offer significant tax benefits. There was some more positive news, though, too, for the Chancellor, with inflation remaining steady at 3.8%, just staying below the 4% which was predicted. And joined now in the studio by our political correspondent, Catherine Forster, and GB News' senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson. Catherine, to you first. They are tinkering around the edges, aren't they, with their plans for the budget? Are we getting to the point when they've got to break that manifesto pledge not to increase national insurance for employees, income tax or push up VAT?
I think it's certainly possible, because here we go again, another budget, a black hole of between 20 and 30 billion pounds, and no really easy way of raising it. It would be very brave, wouldn't it, to break that manifesto promise, although they could say circumstances have changed, look at the dangerous world, defence spending and so on and so forth. At the moment, it sounds like they are considering what would be effectively £2 billion tax raid on people like lawyers, like doctors, like accountants who use these limited liability partnerships, which means that they effectively pay less tax. The Chancellor believes that that is unfair.
Yeah.
It's about 190,000 people affected if they go ahead with it.
Just playing around the edges, Nigel Nelson. I mean, this government couldn't even cut $5 billion off the benefits bill last summer. This will just barely scratch the surface of what they need to do.
Well, I mean, if they were to do this, the estimation is about $2 billion. We have been hearing a lot of these different kinds of things. It was only a couple of weeks ago we heard 8% national insurance on landlords being an example. Yeah. And there have been a whole host of them. Rachel Reeves' problem, as Catherine has just said, is that what you end up doing is you hit specific groups. That's because she ruled out increases
farmers, pensioners, then on that?
Exactly. So farmers, non-doms, parents who send their kids to private schools, and each group thinks they're being treated unfairly because they're being hit with a specific tax. If she'd not pledged to not raise income tax is always the easiest one. We'll all moan about it, but at least we all moan together. And so that probably is overall better. The big problem, of course, is it breaks the manifesto commitment.
That's huge, because the manifesto is like the Holy Bible. It's written in law. It can't be changed or messed about with.
So the idea that Keir Starmer would breach his manifesto, that really is the last resort. So I'm not sure about this budget.
Catherine Forster, Nigel Farage is on strike. What do you make of that? Is it going to pay off or not? He wants to sit out until he gets a chance to be called at PMQs. He's tired of being talked about and mocked.
Yes, he is. I was sitting in the press gallery, and there across to my right, there was Nigel Farage sitting next to Aaron Banks. And he's had a lot of criticism in the past because he often misses PMQs. It's something you asked him about in Washington. I asked him about, I think, when I interviewed him for GB News at the Reform Conference, and he said, basically, what's the point? What's the point? Because people have a go at me. So he tweeted out today, every week at PMQs, I am attacked by the Prime Minister and Labour MPs, but have no right of reply. I am just a mere spectator. So I've decided to spectate from the public gallery instead. So he's making a protest. And, of course, it doesn't hurt.
Well,
we all talk about Nigel Farage.
We're talking about it, but the Tories are saying he's now literally a spectator, not even opposing the government, which is his job. Nigel Nelson, you've been in the lobby longer than I have, and I've been
Since
here
the Boer War.
for 2 decades. What do you take of this?
I think it's a stunt. And the stunt is achieving exactly what Nigel wants, which is for us to be talking about it.
OK, Nigel Nelson, Catherine Forster, thank you both. See you in the next hour. Still to come, we'll be speaking to GB News' battle-hardened reporter in Northern Ireland, Dougie Beattie, after he attended the chaotic scenes in Dublin after violent protests erupted outside a Migrant hotel. This is GB News, of course, and we are, I'm proud to be, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken.
How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m.
Only on GB News.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though. I'm so surprised. I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Now, a migrant hotel protest erupted in Dublin overnight after a man was charged for an alleged sexual assault. GB News' Northern Ireland correspondent was at the scene and spoke to Patrick Christie's last night. Here's Dougie Beattie.
A crowd turned up here, about 2,000 people, and they started to march down towards the City West Hotel. And of course, as soon as that started, the TSG, the public order section of the Garda Síochána, the Republic of Ireland's police force, moved in. Now, during that time, they attacked us, the media, right in the middle of that, and I've never ever seen that before. But what they've done is they've pushed all the rioters down the road into little side streets here, and right now there's a very tense standoff. And just a few moments ago, the sergeant came forward from behind the riot shields and asked people that wanted to leave, form a line and leave, but he wouldn't let them take their cars with them. And now we have the ridiculous situation, and I don't know if you can just see behind me here, there's a guy that is an immigrant trying to get into the hotel, and the guards won't let him out, and he's now stuck in the same side as the protesters. This police force has lost control of this totally.
Well, we can now cross live to County Derry and speak to our colleague Dougie Beattie. Dougie, it's daylight. What a night you had last night. I heard you say earlier that the protesters had horses. They're on mounted horseback, charging the police on horseback.
Yes, some of it, if it wasn't so serious, it would actually be laughable. Only in Ireland would you see a lot of cob horses coming onto the street and charging at the Garda Síochána lines, that is the police force of the Republic of Ireland. And that's the type of tactics that were being used last night by those that were protesting against this migrant hotel. Now, really, Chris, there is a very serious side to this. About 3 years ago, I started reporting on this in the Republic of Ireland about the worries about how many immigrants were coming in, especially undocumented males. We then seen a triple stabbing in the centre of Dublin against children. That sparked a riot. We've seen the Ballymena riots here after a minor was allegedly raped in Ballymena. That spread right across Northern Ireland in May. And now we see when allegations of a child being attacked outside one of these centres in the Republic of Ireland. The clue isn't hard to get here. I mean, if you attack children in Ireland, for sure you will get a response. And the Irish government at this minute in time are struggling to contain what is going on in the Republic of Ireland. And last night that really boiled over into some hardened violence on the streets. In fact, they got down as far as the Lewis line, the tram lines, and there was running battles in the street there as well. The guards themselves are trying to close this down, and the Irish media, likes of the big stations down there, are not attending these protests, and therefore it's nearly impossible, well, it is impossible for any journalist to verify by just getting shots off YouTube and taking press releases off the government. You have to be on the ground. You must be where the action is in order to tell your viewers exactly what you are seeing, not your opinion, but what you are seeing. And last night we got extremely close to the front lines with the Irish police and protesters. It started to get very, very boisterous indeed. Bricks and bottles were coming in, and we have done what we have done for 30 years in riots. You move towards the police line and you try to get up the outside of the police line. You tell them who you are. Well, they know who you are. You have a TV camera in your hand. We told them twice, media, and at that point our camera woman was rammed into a fence, and then of course I was standing with the camera, and you could see from the shots there that they openly attacked us, actually smashing the front of the camera when they did it. And you could see from that police officer's eyes that they were well intentioned in what they were about to do to us. They had also pepper sprayed us and pepper sprayed another member of the media at another location. So this is going on in Ireland. It's not going to get any easier. In fact, Chris, over this next few weeks it could get a lot worse, especially now there's a presidential election on Friday in the Republic of Ireland.
I'm going to ask you quickly: Are you both okay? You and your camera woman? And have the police?
Oh yeah. No, the police haven't said anything to us. You know, I mean, there's a few bruises, and pepper spray doesn't leave a nice taste, and it stings your eyes quite badly. But as I said, I've been doing this for 32 years. You get on, get over it, and move on. Okay. It's just actually, it was the shock of the police who are meant to protect you, really opening up on us.
Okay. Dougie Beattie from County Derry, thank you for joining us there. Now, the Garda press office has told GB News Anne Garda Síochána does not comment on operational matters. In general, the organisation fully respects the right and importance of journalists to report on matters in the public interest. We have previously provided media with training courses in relation to safety at public order incidents. Anne Garda Síochána notes that reporters, crew and their editors have a responsibility to ensure their own safety while reporting from dynamic and evolving public order incidents. There's more to come now between now and 5 o'clock. Suella Braverman, the former Conservative Home Secretary, joins me live as she calls on Safeguarding Minister Jess Phillips to resign over the grooming gang's inquiry. But first, your latest headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Chris, thank you. The top stories. GB News can confirm the number of migrants crossing the Channel has already surpassed the total for the whole of last year. This year's total is 36,886. The Prime Minister has come under fire after 4 survivors quit the government's grooming gangs inquiry, accusing officials of creating a toxic environment and watering it down. At Prime Minister's questions, Kemi Badenoch accused the government of a cover-up, saying survivors feel dismissed and ignored. Meanwhile, another candidate to chair the grooming gangs inquiry pulled out of the process, telling the Home Secretary the appointment process has been defined more by the vested interests of some, as well as political opportunism and point scoring. Jim Gamble was one of two people named in reports as a potential option to lead the inquiry. Another, Annie Hudson, withdrew yesterday. The Home Office says it's disappointed that both have pulled out. Mohammed Umar Khan has been sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 16 years for the murder of teenager Harvey Wilgoose at their school. The 15-year-old stabbed Harvey in the heart with a hunting knife at All Saints Catholic High School in February. That's the latest. More in half an hour.
For all the latest from GB News whilst you're on the go, get the GB News app. Scan the QR code now to download or visit gbnews.com/app.
Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. This afternoon really is the calm before the storm, turning wet and windy overnight with some Met Office warnings issued for both wind and rain. And it's all due to Storm Benjamin. This has been named by Meteo France, initially pushing into parts of southwest England, skirting its way eastwards through the course of the evening. So with it, it is going to bring some very heavy outbreaks of rain, initially across parts of the south, moving into parts of central and southeastern England through the course of the night. This rain is likely to be quite heavy and persistent, particularly across parts of East Anglia, then a secondary area of rain starting to push into the southwest as we head towards dawn. Not only this, but it is going to bring some strong and gusty winds, particularly around coastal areas of East Anglia, east and southeastern parts of England. Even inland areas, however, we'll see some strong and gusty conditions. Also around coasts of Wales, southwest England, a chance we could see some gusty conditions here. Now, gust speeds could potentially be between 50 to 60 miles per hour, so some quite impactful winds as we head through into Thursday morning. Slightly more settled across Northern Ireland, northern parts of England, though it's going to be quite cloudy with some showers. A secondary area of low pressure just to the northwest of Scotland, so it's going to be quite breezy here at times, and we'll also see some showers here too. The rain will stick around across eastern, southeastern parts of England through much of Thursday, still quite heavy and persistent at times, a chance we could see some localised impacts here, and still very strong and gusty winds, and quite strong northerly winds too, which could potentially have some impact across parts of southeastern England. So it's set to be a very unsettled day, the best of the brightness probably across western parts of Scotland, but here still quite breezy with some showers. Now that rain will linger for a time across eastern areas of England before that low pressure will eventually drift off into the North Sea, so even through into the evening we could see some strong winds across eastern areas of England. Friday will be a little bit brighter, some showers in places, but as we head towards the weekend, it is going to be feeling chilly.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, this is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. Westbound traffic on the M4 between junctions 24 Coldra and 26 Malpas is congested. Drivers on the A38 northbound in Staffordshire face 10-minute delays between junctions A5121 Burton upon Trent North and A5132. The M1 northbound in Bedfordshire has a collision between junctions 12 and 13, causing 50-minute delays with 2 lanes closed. Cornwall's A30 eastbound is congested between A3047 Camborne East and A3047 Redruth West. And on the trains, Northern buses replace trains between Corkickle and Whitehaven. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Welcome back. I'm Christopher Hope on GB News. It's a royal moment in Rome. The Eternal City, of course. The King and Queen are visiting the Vatican to meet Pope Leo as part of the 225 Jubilee year. King Charles and Pope Leo are to become the first British monarch and pontiff to pray together at a church service since the Reformation in the 16th century. That's before GB News was broadcasting, let me tell you that. This historic moment will be in the Sistine Chapel in the Vatican. The visit celebrates unity and hope, marking a historic moment for both the Church of England and the Catholic Church. Let's cross now to Rome, where GB News' royal correspondent Cameron Walker will tell us more. Cameron.
Hi there, Chris. Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, of course, this is a hugely historic moment and one that is incredibly important to the King, I'm told, all about his mission to really promote interfaith harmony. And it will be hugely significant because it is the first time in 500 years that a British monarch has publicly prayed with a pope inside the Sistine Chapel, and all of that, of course, is happening tomorrow, that pomp, that pageantry. And I'm here at an airport just outside of Rome ahead of King Charles and Queen Camilla's arrival. We're expecting a ceremonial welcome, as you would expect, with a state visit. There's lots of other elements going on as well, including the King and the Queen visiting St Paul's outside the walls tomorrow. It's got a special link, really, to English history. The Order of Agata, for example, decorates it. A new seat has also been installed, which is also going to be used by the futures King William and George when they come back to Rome and to the Vatican to visit that country. But of course, the elephant in the royal frame room is Prince Andrew, who still dominates these front pages. And of course, Prince Andrew, there's a number of questions have been spoken about in the Commons about him living in Royal Lodge, apparently rent-free, which of course is at the expense of the British taxpayers, and the Prime Minister not ruling out some kind of parliamentary committee inquiry into that fact, and that does have a danger perhaps to overshadow His Majesty's tour here to the Vatican. But the King's focus is very much on that interfaith harmony, the fourth Pope he has met in his life.
Cameron Walker, and just finally, did you sense that there's moods changing? I thought the fact that the PM didn't rule out a select committee inquiry into Royal Lodge and who lives there, calling the Duke of York, as you say, the Prince Andrew now, to give evidence. Do you think that not being ruled out in the Commons was a moment of more pressure on Buckingham Palace to be firmer with Prince Andrew?
Well, I think it is a situation. Of course, a couple of days ago, we had the palace basically saying, well, it's up to government ministers, and government ministers saying, well, we take our lead from the palace. But clearly, I think there's been a drip feed of backbench politicians really voicing concerns. And then we have leaders of political parties, as you mentioned, Chris, at Davy in the House of Commons today, voicing concerns following the revelation Prince Andrew appears not to be paying rent. And now the Prime Minister was very quick, really, not to rule out some kind of inquiry into that, which makes me think, has he spoken to people inside Buckingham Palace? Of course, they really wanted to nip it in the bud on Friday with Prince Andrew announcing he was no longer going to be using his Duke of York title. That clearly hasn't worked, and clearly I think there will be some kind of effort from both the palace and government ministers to really try and draw a line under this at some point. But of course, there's a lot of unanswered questions still.
OK. Cameron Walker, live from Rome. Thank you for joining us, and good luck there watching the King and Queen arrive. Now, controversy mounts about the state of the grooming gangs inquiry, yet to start, yet to have a chair, and of course losing victims advising it at a rate of knots. One person who's under pressure is the Minister for Safeguarding, Jess Phillips. She's been directly criticised by grooming gang survivors who claim the inquiry is being watered down, claims that Phillips herself has vigorously denied. One person who wants the minister to resign is the Conservative MP and former Conservative Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, and she's with me now in the studio. Suella Braverman, great to see you here. Why should she go? It's very difficult to deal with this crisis. Your government failed to deal with it. You've been accused by Baroness of Alexis Jay of failing yourself on this. Why not give Jess Phillips a chance to get it right?
Well, first of all, let me just say this is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, scandal facing our country. It's been going on for decades. There's been report after report after report, and yet the victims are still without justice. I've got to refute the claims made by Alexis Jay. I met with her on several occasions. She, of course, wrote the report into child sexual abuse in a broad sense. When I was Home Secretary, I met with her on several occasions. I adopted pretty much all of the recommendations that she made.
She says you didn't
she says that I didn't engage with her. Well, the record will show that we had several meetings while I was Home Secretary. I was the Home Secretary who went out on a limb to set up a task force which led to hundreds of arrests, 500 arrests of perpetrators, safeguarding over 1,000 victims in its first year. Together with the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, who actually took an interest in this issue himself, we did deliver some justice and we did deliver some results. Was it enough? No, of course not. But the record will show that I did engage with Alexis Jay. I set up a task force and I took this issue very seriously, talking about it very much to my own detriment, actually.
And we are where we are now. Jess Phillips, under pressure, Safeguarding Minister. She's lost the confidence of some of those victims, not all. Why should she resign?
Because, as I said, this issue, we cannot afford to waste more time, and we cannot have more ministers gaslighting the British people and the victims and the survivors. We need an inquiry now. We need to get to the bottom of the truth, and we need justice for the victims. Jess Phillips, having lost the confidence of, I think, 4 survivors who have now resigned from the panel in the last few days, is a damning reflection of her oversight of this process. They have now lost the candidates to chair the inquiry. They're saying it's going to be taken in-house. They're basically moving the deck chairs around while the Titanic is sinking on this.
Poor victims here. They've been let down by the state, by officials, by police, by social workers, by politicians, and they're looking at this going, what on earth is going on?
Absolutely. They just want justice. And, you know, my government didn't provide justice sufficiently for them, but they do need it now. One of the survivors has said that Jess Phillips was lying, and it looks like a cover-up of the cover-up. They don't want to talk about the ethnicity.
And she would deny that, of course. I mean...
Sure, but they don't want to talk about the ethnicity of the perpetrators, which is an absolutely integral feature of the whole scandal. If that's not a cover-up, I don't know what is.
The PM and Home Secretary have said they won't shy away from dealing with the issue of ethnicity as outlined in the Lewis Casey report. So that's been sorted out there. But we need to have this to start work, don't we? Because it must report quickly. Should it be a judge or not? We're saying no to a judge by the Prime Minister, for example.
I think it should be someone who is outside of the government machine.
A judge?
Potentially a judge, yes, because we've seen that ministers have failed, the arms of the state have failed, the Home Office has failed, the police have failed, social workers have failed. And so we do need someone who is outside of that machinery to bring a fresh pair of eyes and clean hands to the whole situation. And, importantly, someone who will command confidence amongst the victims and survivors.
I've got to ask you, the day which we pass more small boats arrivals for all of last year by today, which is the 3rd week of October. This is a disaster for the government. Should they, or you'll say yes to this, but I was going to ask you, but the Rwanda plan was the answer you had, but they would say it wasn't going to work.
Yeah, and they were wrong. I mean, because the Rwanda plan is effectively being used to varying degrees by the US. The very homes that I went to visit when I was Home Secretary in Rwanda, which were being constructed thanks to British taxpayer money, planned to be used by asylum seekers that we were planning to remove and deport to Rwanda, are now being used to house illegal migrants or people who are being deported from the US, because President Trump has seen some value in the scheme. Now, if it's good enough for the Americans, I think it should be good enough for Starmer.
But as it's not working at the moment. Also, I must ask you while I've got you, Nigel Farage is sitting out, he's boycotting PMQs. Should he be called more often by the Speaker? Is it fair? Or do you think it's just tough? You've got 5 MPs, Nigel. Suck it up.
I think he should be called more often. I think I think reform speaks for a large majority at the moment of the public, if you read and believe the polls. And they're winning lots of elections. Much like GBNews, they are the voice of the people in many, many ways. Yeah. And I do think it's not a fair reflection of the state of British politics to exclude key politicians.
And you're still a Tory? No plans to join Reform UK?
No plans, no.
Suella Braverman, it's great to see you in the studio. Thank you for spending the time with us today. Thank you. Suella Braverman now, of course. Now, if you want some holiday sun, and we certainly do given the weather outside in Westminster, here's the forecast of some of the top European destinations.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean all clear skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Bad news if you're off on holiday for the half-term period. Northern parts of Europe, there's still plenty of unsettled weather. Some heavy rain, thunderstorms and also some strong gusty winds at times. Now through Thursday across much of Spain and Portugal, largely settled, though there could be some showers in places. The main area of the unsettled weather are going to be in parts of France, Germany, also Italy and parts of Greece, where we could see some quite intense showers, some thunderstorms and some strong gusty winds, particularly across France. More sunshine around on Friday before a return of the showers over the weekend.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel. Dramatic scenes in a North London street as police move in to arrest members of an organised crime gang. Inside their vehicle, evidence of a multi-million-pound trade in phone theft. A large number of stolen smartphones are discovered, all wrapped in tinfoil to block any phone signal and prevent their owners tracing them. After a year-long investigation, Scotland Yard says it has now dismantled the criminal operation that they believe is responsible for smuggling more than 40,000 stolen smartphones over to China. Officers have now recovered thousands of stolen smartphones as their investigation continues. Many of the handsets stolen in street robberies end up in shops like this. Officers recovered multiple stolen phones and arrested 2 men on suspicion of money laundering after finding £40,000 in cash.
My warning to people that are involved in this criminal enterprise, whether it be shop workers, the shopkeepers, or even the faceless enterprise businessmen who own multiple different venues, is that you may have felt like you were acting with impunity and that we weren't coming after you and we couldn't come after you, and that actually the crime pays. So if eventually we do come, then that's just a business loss. Is that we are coming after you. We are going to come and conduct warrants, not just on your business premises, but we will target you at home, we'll target you in your cars. Nowhere is safe to conduct criminal enterprise.
GB News, the People's Channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised. I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes and Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. I'm Christopher Hope on GB News. Now, Christmas has come early in our second city, in Birmingham. A giant 65-foot Christmas tree, there it is for those watching on TV, has been erected in Victoria Square more than 2 whole months before the big day. But while council bosses say it's part of preparations for the city's famous German market, locals aren't feeling quite so festive, causing the bankrupt council accusing it of getting its priorities wrong, while bin strikes have left rubbish piling up in parts of the city. Joining me now is GB News' own national reporter, Jack Carson. Jack, are you a Grinch or are you delighted to see the tree there?
Well, I'm going to stay a Grinch for the moment. I like to think middle of November at the earliest for me for Christmas. But here, as you were saying in Birmingham, this 65-foot tree has been erected over the weekend. I have to say, it is a real tree, so it's made up of lots of smaller fir Christmas trees, all put together to make that big 65-foot one, erected here in Victoria Square as part of the German Christmas market preparations, which opens actually on the 1st of November. That's going to run for 7 weeks. So Birmingham, for years, this market has been going here in the city since 1997. So Birmingham for years has started to have this reputation around Christmas, that the Christmas market is here for weeks and weeks before really people start to feel festive. But it of course makes a lot of money for the city centre. Around £300 million, according to a survey done a few years ago, is contributed to the local economy because of the market here. But is it too early to put that tree up? We've been speaking to people walking by it today. Here's what they've told us.
No, because I think there's a lot of tourists that is going to be coming, and it's almost the Christmas season, so I think it's appropriate.
Absolutely not. I don't think it's ever too early to put up a Christmas tree. I have travelled down for Scotland for work yesterday, and I thought it was such a lovely surprise seeing it.
I guess it is kind of early. I mean, sure, the market takes a bit of getting together. I guess there's money to be made, isn't there? You know, it gets the tourists in, so...
Yeah, so a little bit of a mixed reaction there, Chris, to how people feel about this tree going up already. Of course, it has to actually close for a majority of the day on Remembrance Sunday, so that people aren't here while those commemorations are going on in the cathedral, just a short walk from here. But it's open from the morning till the evening, but people here not feeling quite so festive yet.
Well, thank you, Jack Carson. Great to see you. I was there last year at the market. It's fantastic. But next time I want to see you in a Santa suit for your hits. This is GB News, of course, Britain's news channel. Still to come between now and 6 p.m. Live coverage of Charles and Camilla's arrival in Rome. But first, here's your weather. It's warmer in Rome.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. This afternoon really is the calm before the storm, turning wet and windy overnight with some Met Office warnings issued for both wind and rain. And it's all due to Storm Benjamin. This has been named by Meteo France, initially pushing into parts of southwest England, skirting its way eastwards through the course of the evening. So with it, it is going to bring some very heavy outbreaks of rain, initially across parts of the south, moving into parts of central and southeastern England through the course of the night. This rain is likely to be quite heavy and persistent, particularly across parts of East Anglia, then a secondary area of rain starting to push into the southwest as we head towards dawn. Not only this, but it is going to bring some strong and gusty winds, particularly around coastal areas of East Anglia, east and southeastern parts of England. Even inland areas, however, we'll see some strong and gusty conditions. Also around coasts of Wales, southwest England, a chance we could see some gusty conditions here. Now, gust speeds could potentially be between 50 to 60 miles per hour, so some quite impactful winds as we head through into Thursday morning. Slightly more settled across Northern Ireland, northern parts of England, though it's going to be quite cloudy with some showers. A secondary area of low pressure just to the northwest of Scotland, so it's going to be quite breezy here at times, and we'll also see some showers here too. The rain will stick around across eastern, southeastern parts of England through much of Thursday, still quite heavy and persistent at times, a chance we could see some localised impacts here, and still very strong and gusty winds, and quite strong northerly winds too, which could potentially have some impact across parts of southeastern England. So it's set to be a very unsettled day, the best of the brightness probably across western parts of Scotland, but here still quite breezy with some showers. Now that rain will linger for a time across eastern areas of England before that low pressure will eventually drift off into the North Sea, so even through into the evening we could see some strong winds across eastern areas of England. Friday will be a little bit brighter, some showers in places, but as we head towards the weekend, it is going to be feeling chilly.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. Expect significant congestion on the M4 eastbound at junction 32 Corriton, with heavy traffic affecting the off-slip. A collision on the M1 northbound between junctions 12 and 13 has closed 2 lanes, causing 50-minute delays. In Staffordshire, the A38 northbound is slow between A5121, Burton-upon-Trent North, and A5132, resulting in a 10-minute delay. In Derbyshire, expect delays on the A38 southbound, with congestion between the A50 and its junction with the A5132. And on the trains, buses are replacing services between Corkickle and Whitehaven. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
There's 2 weeks remaining in our latest, greatest giveaway. You could be in the driving seat of this Benamar Primera motorhome. This luxurious home from home comes with all the mod cons. Plus, you can use it with your current driving licence. We'll also boost your bank account with a whopping £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like. It only takes one entry to become a winner. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, this is Jubes & Co with you.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie's here. GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Good afternoon, it's 5 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show with me, Christopher Hope, broadcasting live on GB News across the UK with our very latest news, debate and analysis until 6 p.m. tonight. Here's what's coming up on the show. Jim Gamble has become the second candidate to withdraw from leading the government's grooming gangs inquiry, just days after social worker Annie Hudson pulled out. That comes as Sir Keir Starmer defends his handling of this probe, which is yet to start, of course, after Kevin Badenoch accused him of hanging his head in shame.
The inquiry is not and will never be watered down. Its scope will not change. It will examine the ethnicity and religion of the offenders, and we will find the right person to chair the inquiry.
Jim Gamble is gone, that former police officer. Some survivors now saying they want a judge. But those are two chairs with track records in tackling child abuse, as many fear that a toxic environment has swarmed this inquiry.
Elsewhere, small boat arrivals have hit a new high, and one migrant sent back to France has returned. Yep, by small boat. Fueling more claims the government has lost control of our southern border. Rachel Reeves targets Britain's top earners, with lawyers, GPs and accountants set to face higher taxes in next month's budget under plans to raise billions for the Treasury. But is this fair?
Yes, Rachel Reeves has got yet another budget black hole of 20 to 30 billion, and the more you earn, the more you should worry.
The King and Queen today will begin their state visit to the Holy See, where the King will be the first British monarch to pray with the Pope in 500 years. But is their trip being overshadowed by Prince Andrew? But most importantly, I want to hear from you. Send me your views and post your comments by going to gbnews.com/your say. But now it's time for the news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Chris, thank you very much. The top stories. The Prime Minister has come under fire after 4 survivors quit the government's grooming gangs inquiry, accusing officials of creating a toxic environment and watering it down. At Prime Minister's questions earlier today, the Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch accused the government of a cover-up, saying survivors feel dismissed and ignored.
They voted against the national inquiry 3 times, so the victims don't believe them. They can say no as much as they like. It is on the record. They don't like it, but it's true. Now, one of the victims has quit. They believe that the inquiry will downplay the racial and religious motivations behind their abuse. Aren't the victims right when they call it a cover-up?
But Sir Keir Starmer hit back, insisting the inquiry will not be watered down and will examine the ethnicity and religion of offenders in full.
Survivors have been ignored for many years, including by the state that, of course, is supposed to protect them. We owe it to them and to Fiona and to the country to answer the concerns that they have raised. The inquiry is not and will never be watered down. Its scope will not change. It will examine the ethnicity and religion of the offenders, and we will find the right person to chair the inquiry.
Meanwhile, another candidate to chair the grooming gangs inquiry has pulled out of the process, telling the Home Secretary the appointment process has been defined more by the vested interests of some, as well as political opportunism and point scoring. Jim Gamble was one of 2 people named in reports as a potential option to lead the inquiry. Another, Annie Hudson, withdrew yesterday. The Home Office says it's disappointed that both have pulled out. GB News can confirm the number of migrants crossing the Channel has already surpassed the total for the whole of last year. 2 Border Force vessels arrived in Dover this afternoon, carrying around 150 people, taking this year's total to 36,886. That's 70 more than in all of last year. Senior security sources say it's deeply disappointing for ministers, with more than 2 months still left in the year. Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood reacted to the latest figures, saying the previous government left our borders in crisis and we're still living with the consequences. These figures are shameful. The British people deserve better. Meanwhile, a migrant sent to France under the government's new one-in, one-out scheme has returned to the UK by small boat, saying he feared for his life in France. The man, now in immigration detention, claims he was trafficked and abused by smugglers and says he didn't feel safe after being sent back. Human rights groups say others removed under the scheme have also faced violence and exploitation, but the Home Office insists anyone who re-enters the UK illegally will be removed. A passport-forging criminal gang and firm of financiers have been hit with sanctions in a government crackdown on groups accused of propping up the people smuggling trade. The Balkan-based network is now banned from travelling to the UK and cut off from its finances. Sir Keir Starmer says it's another warning that gangs who trade in human suffering will face the full force of the UK's sanctions regime. Elsewhere, Mohammed Umar Khan has been sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 16 years for the murder of teenager Harvey Wilgoose at their school. The 15-year-old stabbed Harvey in the heart with a hunting knife at All Saints Catholic High School in February. The jury, in a month-long trial, was told that 15-year-old Harvey was attacked following a confrontation between the pair during a lesson earlier that day. While investigating the murder, police found photographs of Khan posing with hunting-style knives and a hammer. His internet search history included terms like zombie killer knife. Food and drinks prices in the UK are increasing at their slowest rate in more than a year, while overall inflation remains unchanged for the 3rd month in a row. Month on month, the cost of food and non-alcoholic drinks edged down slightly in September, the first fall since May last year. The ONS said this was likely to have been driven by increased sales and discounting by retailers. The UK inflation rate for all items remained stable at a lower than expected 3.8% in the year to September, according to official figures. Chancellor Rachel Reeves said she was not satisfied with the numbers on inflation, while Shadow Chancellor Mel Stride said it was pushing up the cost of living. And in Dublin, 5 men have been charged with public order offences after violent scenes outside a hotel housing asylum seekers. Irish police were pelted with bricks, fireworks and missiles, and a van was set on fire during the unrest at the City West Hotel. Police Commissioner Justin Kelly described the scenes as thuggery. It's the second night of protests outside the hotel. All 5 have been remanded on bail with various conditions, including that they all stay away from the City West Hotel. The protest came after an alleged sexual assault on a girl in the vicinity in the early hours of Monday morning. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More from me in half an hour.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Here's a snapshot of the markets. The pound buying you $1.3367 and €1.1512. The price of gold, £3,020.27 per ounce. The FTSE 100 is at 9,521 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Now we begin this last hour of the show with a major blow for the government's smash the gangs policy as a number of migrant arrivals passes the total for the whole of last year. And it's only the third week of October. Joining me now is our Home and Security Editor, Mark White. Mark White, this is a complete disaster for the government.
There's no doubt it's really bad. As you say, we've still got 2 and a bit months to go until the end of the year. And OK, the weather conditions at this time of year can be pretty tricky, but anytime there's any kind of easing of the winds out there in the channel, these people smugglers, as we know because we report on this all the time, will push these boats out into the water. Now today already 2 small boats were pushed out into the water in not the best conditions. 151 migrants came across today, and that has taken us beyond the total for the whole of last year, which was 36,816. We're now at 36,000, almost 900. And as we speak, Chris, there's another French escort, the French Border Patrol vessel Riddens, which has just reached the line into UK waters in pretty bad, treacherous conditions. There are 2 Border Force vessels and a lifeboat have all responded to this because of the difficulties in transferring these migrants from these small boats into the Border Force vessels or the lifeboats. So pretty tricky out there, but sadly, as far as our audience is concerned, it's going to mean another 50 or 60 migrants to add to the total today. So you can see already today we're pushing not that far from 37,000 with just over 2 months to go. I think there's no doubt we'll be well over 40,000, even bumping up towards that record year of 45,000 in 2022.
Gosh, Mark White. And also, the government's approach is this one-in, one-out scheme. So far, 42 migrants returned legally, paid for by the taxpayer, those arriving here. But there's been a moment today, hasn't there? We're calling him the hokey-cokey migrant. He one in, one out, one in again because he was deported. He arrived by a small boat, sent back to France, and guess what? He's come across the channel again. He's an unnamed Iranian, we're told, who wants to claim asylum in the UK. This is deeply embarrassing for the government, isn't it?
Yes, and more so given that Parliament, in questioning of the Border Security Command head just in recent days, asked about the safeguards that were in place to stop anyone who maybe returned to France from coming back across the channel. And they didn't think it was much of a problem. They didn't foresee this as really being an issue at all. Well, here we are, just a few days later, and this migrant, one that we know of, that's come back across the channel. So really embarrassing, especially given that this returns deal is very modest in the extreme. Only 42 that have been returned back to France. One more, of course, that's come this way, so down to 41 at the moment, although the government say, Chris, that they will expedite the moves to get this man, an Iranian national, back across the channel to France again. But I think the likelihood is that this person is not going to be in any kind of immigration detention facility in France, so he may well be free to try it again.
It's simply unbelievable, Mark White, isn't it? I mean, the government is almost, it seems impotent in dealing with this problem. Other parties have their own ideas, but right now it's not going well for Labour.
No, and we know that this whole issue did for the Conservatives, without a doubt. It was a major factor in the general election, and it's looking very, very difficult for the Labour Party at the moment. Of course, there's issues around the economy, but this, without a doubt, is a big, big issue for the public, and patience is running out. Patience is gone, I should say, really, on this issue. They don't want any protracted process. So Keir Starmer says there are no quick fixes, but they need a quick fix. They want this sorted, or Labour are going to really find it as difficult as the Conservatives did.
And other parties have other answers, notably leaving the ECHR, and that might lead to a more of a silver bullet, they claim. They'll wait and see. Mark White, thank you again for joining us on Martin Daubney today. Now, earlier we got an indication of how the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, might be planning to close the fiscal black hole. The Chancellor could plan a tax raid on solicitors, GPs and accountants who use limited liability partnerships, which offer significant tax benefits. There was also, though, some positive news for the Chancellor, however, as inflation stayed steady at 3.8%, just staying below the 4% which had been predicted. I'm joined here in GB News' Westminster studio by our political correspondent, Catherine Forster, and GB News' senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson. Nigel Nelson, to you first. It seems to me the Chancellor is playing around the edges, given the scale of what we need to do here as a country in raising money, plugging the gap in the deficit and dealing with the spending that happened on the COVID pandemic and the energy shock. I mean, we're just messing about here, aren't we?
Well, I mean, we're messing about, but
they've got you, though.
These could actually raise big figures. So if you're talking about about GPs, accountants, lawyers, that would be about $2 billion. She could raise another $4 billion from gambling taxes. She seems to have ruled out a wealth tax, which is the one that's a real biggie, because that will actually give you about $24 billion if we taxed people who are worth over £10 million. Anyway, you're absolutely right. It is sort of playing around the edges. This particular one is a loophole that's worth closing. The way a limited liability partnership works, if the three of us were in one, means that if you make a mistake, Chris, that Catherine and myself are not liable. It also means that we all pay our own income tax. However, that our little company wouldn't pay corporate taxes. That's a loophole that you could close.
Catherine Forster, how damaging would it be to rip up the pledge at the election to increase income tax or employees' national insurance or VAT?
Well, I think it would be damaging, but I think she's got no good options at this point, because here we go again. There's a shortfall of 20 to 30 billion pounds. They've got to get the money from somewhere. And we saw last time, obviously, income tax, national insurance, VAT are the big taxes. They bring in most of the money. If you don't go there, you're going to upset massively certain groups of people, like the farmers. So I think there's no easy options. But look, the Tories sort of laid an elephant trap for Labour, because they cut 4p off national insurance, knowing they weren't going to be around to pick up the pieces. They didn't get any credit for it, probably not very many votes, and that made problems even worse for Labour coming in.
Nigel Nelson, today we had the unusual prospect of Nigel Farage, who's trying to be an MP through I think 8 by-elections or 8 elections until he finally got there last July last year, going on strike because he feels he can't get a word in edgeways in PMQs, and he's being criticised all the time. Is he right to do this?
No, I mean, it's a bit petulant. He'd love the fact we're going to be talking about it.
We are, aren't we?
The whole point here is that people are actually saying that because he's leading in the polls, and the Tories, according to the last poll, could actually fall into 6th place if there was a general election tomorrow. The argument is that where Kemi Badenoch gets 200 questions, Nigel Farage gets 6, he ought to have more. No, he shouldn't. The official opposition at the last election, forget the opinion polls, was the Tory party, where they've got 120 MPs. They're the ones who should have most of the questions. Also, backbenchers. Backbenchers, you have to consider, they also need their questions, and the Speaker then distributes those around them. Don't think about opinion polls. Think about elections. That's what democracy is all about.
But we heard earlier from former Labour advisor Theo Bircham saying it's what people want to see. They want to see the guy who's heading the polls grilled in the shop window moment, the box office moment of our political week.
Well, this is the way our constitution works.
Yeah, but you're the establishment, Nigel.
I'm actually a believer in working by the rules that we've actually set down.
Why not get him held to account properly?
Because polls are not elections. Polls are polls. It could all change again next week. On the basis of that, the people elected an official opposition, is the Conservative Party.
Why not change it each week? Why not move it around according to the polls each week? Make it more responsive to the people.
We could do all sorts of things. We could have a president instead of a prime minister. We could change the constitution completely, but everything then starts to fall apart.
Let's not go towards Republic just yet, Nigel Nelson on GB News. Catherine Forster, earlier we heard from Angela Rayner, the first time she's spoken since she resigned over her tax affairs. What did she say?
Yeah, it was interesting how many Labour MPs stayed in the chamber for that. There's a lot of support for her still.
Rachel Reeves, David Lammy, Bridget Phillipson, all the big guns, apart from the Prime Minister.
A lot of big names, and Wes Streeting at Labour conference just a couple of weeks ago said, we need her back. So the fact that she failed to pay, £40,000 in stamp duty, many of them are not holding it against her. I thought... it was a very effective speech. She was clearly upset at times. She spoke about how, she'd been a single mother at 16 and that people had written her off. As she says, she spent her whole life fighting that and proving herself. She talked about what she's proud of in terms of the workers' rights legislation and renters' rights that's coming in. She was obviously quite moved talking about Grenfell and this duty of candour, which is now coming in, which will supposedly put, a legal duty on people to speak up. I thought it was interesting how many people were there, and some people say that they're planning for her to come back. But I do wonder, she's a big figure, she's got a real personality, people connect with her. But can you come back at a time when people are worried about money, when it has been seen that you failed to pay £40,000, when, let's face it, if the press hadn't found out, she'd have got off without paying that money?
There's a question, Nigel Nelson. Can Angela Rayner come back?
Yes, she can, but not yet. I mean, I think...
How long do you wait? For the election cycle?
No, I think another year. I think that she needs another year in the wilderness, and then I think people will forgive her.
Will they forgive her? I mean, it's like Labour people like yourselves forgiving her, but she just tried to avoid, by mistake, some tax.
Well, I think it's quite clear that it was certainly an oversight on her part. She should have actually checked much more clearly, especially given the position she was in. But because of that, oversight, you can forgive that after a while.
Catherine Forster, I mean, we looked at the numbers on the front bench there. They are supporting her, aren't they?
Yes, they are. But, I mean, I remember at the time, we spent days and days talking about how very complicated it was. It turns out the information was on the HMRC website in black and white. I read it in 2 paragraphs. And I'm afraid when you are Housing Secretary and Deputy Prime Minister, you've got to dot your I's and cross your T's, and she didn't. And I think no matter what Labour MPs may wish, that will be quite difficult for the public to forgive if and when Labour are casting around for a new leader.
Nigel Nelson, just turning to the Grooming gangs inquiry, we've got the second candidate to be chair has withdrawn today, the former police officer Jim Gamble. There's currently no one in the frame for this role, and the PM says it can't be a judge because a judge would mean it would take too long and you couldn't have criminal investigations alongside a judge-led inquiry. How on earth does the PM get out of this mess on the Grooming gangs crisis?
I think you're absolutely right. It is a mess, and one of the reasons for the mess that Jim Gamble mentioned today for his reason for quitting was he got fed up with what he called political opportunism and the point scoring that goes with it. That applies to all politicians. They've all been involved in that. You may end up with a judge anyway, because at some point you're going to have somebody that everyone's got confidence in. Jim Gamble was an ex-police officer. Many of the survivors didn't have confidence in him. Annie Hudson, the other prospective chairman who resigned, she was she worked in social services. The survivors didn't have confidence in that. Somewhere along the line, you've got to find somebody independent who they do have confidence in.
And the question is, can they, Catherine Forster?
Well, they're going to have to, but it is an almighty mess. And, of course, with the Tories, too, they had 14 years to do something about this. And they didn't do all that they could have done.
Catherine Forster, Nigel Nelson, thank you both for joining us. Now, after the break, live coverage of the King and Queen's visit to the Holy See in Italy. That's after the break.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean all clear skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Bad news if you're off on holiday for the half-term period. Northern parts of Europe, there's still plenty of unsettled weather. Some heavy rain, thunderstorms and also some strong gusty winds at times. Now through Thursday across much of Spain and Portugal, largely settled, though there could be some showers in places. The main area of the unsettled weather are going to be in parts of France, Germany, also Italy and parts of Greece, where we could see some quite intense showers, some thunderstorms and some strong gusty winds, particularly across France. More sunshine around on Friday before a return of the showers over the weekend.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m.
Only on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
After Diana's tragic death, and he goes into a lot of the detail in Spare, Harry was traumatized, in denial even, and also there's no question he took to drugs and drink as a part of a panacea. He was able to find himself in the military, but there's absolutely no doubt that that unquestionably changed him.
Well, I mean, both boys did go through it. I mean, like you, I covered the funeral. I stood there and watched him walk behind their mother's coffin. I mean, it did affect both boys, didn't it? But it's Harry is the one that seemed to be searching and angry more than his older brother. And so, I mean, Meghan being a mother figure, it does kind of make sense.
Well, in that sense, it conceivably could. I mean, in the Mirror, he was talking about, even fantasizing, I suggest, about Diana living in California as a sort of granny figure, which I have to say, it's very hard to anticipate what would have happened, but there's absolutely no doubt that that was the catalyst, and truly, truly tragic.
Yeah, of course it was. It was horrible, and it's a horrific thing to happen to two young boys like that. What do you think Meghan would make of this comment, that she is a mother figure to her husband?
Well, I think that she would appreciate the fact that of the two of them, she is very definitely the dominant figure. That is definitely what comes across, and that is the way most people interpret the way their relationship. And I mean, I think they're still in love. I think that the relationship on the whole is working very well. It's hard to be precise because the net is flooded with rumours, as you know, about everything.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. I'm Christopher Hope on GB News. It's 5:25 here. It's 6:25 in Rome. Let's cross there, where GB News' royal correspondent Cameron Walker is waiting the arrival of the King and Queen. Cameron, over to you.
Hi there, Chris. Yes, we are just moments away from His Majesty the King landing in Italy in the government plane. And in fact, if you just pan the camera over to my left, you may just be able to make out the lights of the government's plane, decked out, of course, with the tail of the Union flag, carrying His Majesty the King and Queen Camilla, landing alongside all of his staff and dignitaries ahead of the ceremonial arrival, all, of course, organised by the Vatican. It is, of course, the second time in the space of a year that King Charles has landed at this airport. Of course, back in April, it was meant to be 2 state visits for the price of 1, the Italian state visit and the Vatican state visit. But of course, due to Pope Francis's health, that visit was postponed, and His Majesty the King and Queen Camilla met with Pope Francis privately just a couple of weeks, it turned out, before he passed away. But of course, this will be the first time since his election that King Charles and Queen Camilla will meet Pope Leo the 14th. But it is extra special, of course, because it is going to be the first time in around 500 years that we have had a British monarch and a Pope pray publicly together in a show of unity inside the Sistine Chapel, inside the Vatican tomorrow. Hugely symbolic, of course, hugely significant, because it was King Charles's ancestor, King Henry VIII, who cut ties dramatically with the Roman Catholic Church because he wanted to divorce his first wife, Catherine of Aragon, in 1533. And he declared himself, King Henry VIII, Supreme Governor of the Church of England. King Charles, of course, the current Supreme Governor of the Church of England. So Buckingham Palace sources are really kind of emphasising the significance of that moment when it happens. And of course, presumably all of this was planned for April, but that's not the only thing, of course, happening here inside the Vatican. It's significant again because it is the Papal Jubilee year, which happens once every 25 years. But the King is also going to be the first British monarch, we think, to attend a service at St Paul's outside the walls. That's a separate cathedral inside Rome, but technically it's Vatican land. A church with historic ties to the English crown. It's decorated with the Order of the Garter symbols, but also a special seat has been installed that the King is going to be using tomorrow, but also it's going to stay there for the King's heirs and successors, i.e. the future King William and the future King George, which will, of course, shore up the relations, the permanent relations perhaps, between the Church of England and the Roman Catholic Church. But of course, the elephant in the room, the royal elephant in the room, I should say, is of course Prince Andrew, the King's brother, who continues to dominate the front pages. We do expect, of course, that King Charles is really going to want to focus on what is happening here, his public work, speaking to the Pope, spending time with cardinals as well, and perhaps 1 or 2 meet and greets with the people inside the Vatican as well. But of course, it is something that the King is going to be mindful of, particularly, of course, because his own government ministers have been talking about this Andrew issue in the House of Commons today, particularly when it comes to his occupancy of Royal Lodge. It appears he has been living there effectively rent-free, paying peppercorn rent over the last 2 decades, which could suggest that taxpayers have been missing out on that potential revenue and the profits from the Crown Estate, which owns the building. The Crown Estate profits, technically owned by the King, but for the people, those profits go back into the Treasury for the wider public good. So that money, we thought, was around £200,000 a year Prince Andrew was paying to the Crown Estate. It appears that is not the case. But as I've been saying, the focus here is very much on the King speaking to Pope Leo the 14th, meeting him tomorrow, and of course all the pomp and pageantry that we are expecting inside the airport very shortly indeed.
Cameron, one question I'm interested in, how controversial is it for the King, our King, as head of the Church of England, to pray with the Pope? Will this mean that people protest? Will there be people resigning from either church? Or is it not that controversial anymore, given it's largely a secular society now?
Well, sources speaking to me from the Church of England sources have really tried to emphasise the fact that this does not change his constitutional role whatsoever as Supreme Governor of the Church of England. So that stays exactly as it is, as it has been for the last 500 years. What perhaps is changing slightly is the shoring up of relations between the two churches and the strengthening of relations, something which it appears both the Church of England and the Roman Catholic Church really want to get right over the last couple of centuries. Perhaps not in recent years, since Queen Elizabeth II was on the throne, ascending the throne in 1952, but certainly before that there was a bit of distrust perhaps between the Church of England and the Roman Catholic Church. The whole point, of course, now is shoring up those relations, and it is really unsurprising perhaps that it's King Charles making this historic move, because King Charles really tries to promote interfaith harmony between different religions, including, of course, the Roman Catholic Church and the Church of England. I'm just going to step out of the shot so you can get a glimpse, for those of you watching on television, of the government's plane, decked out, of course, the tail of the Union flag, showing Great Britain perhaps at its best. The United Kingdom printed in gold on the side of this plane. Perhaps this is Britain's answer to Air Force One. I can just about make out the Royal Standard flying out of the cockpit window. Of course, telling everybody that it is King Charles III, monarch and head of state of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, aboard that aircraft. As I said, the second time that King Charles has landed at this airport in the last year. A hastily rearranged visit to make sure that he could get in a state visit to the Holy See, something that has been in the planning for well over a year now perhaps, and something that clearly King Charles thinks is more important than all else when it comes to his traditional outward state visits in the autumn. The King usually takes part in 2 outward state visits, i.e. international state visits each year, one in the spring and one in the autumn. And this autumn tour, of course, last year was to Australia and Samoa. This year, slightly shorter, well, a day and a half really, to the Holy See. A huge difference from a 10-day around-the-world visit, which the King took part in last year. Of course, halfway across the world to Australia and Samoa. I think it's important to point out to GB News viewers and listeners that the King is still undergoing a weekly cycle of cancer treatment. His doctors allowed him to pause that treatment last year when he went to Australia and Samoa. It appears not the case this year, but the King clearly very, very determined to carry on with his constitutional duties as British head of state and do as much as he can and carry out his duties to the best of his ability. And royal sources continue to insist that the King is carrying out a full programme of both national and international tours, and he is expected to do so again in the year 2026, next year. For those of you listening on the radio, we're watching live pictures
Cameron Walker
on GB News.
Cameron Walker, thank you so much. We're going to keep looking at those pictures there live from the airport in Rome with Cameron Walker, of course, watching on. With me in the studio here is royal commentator and historian Rafe Hadel-Manku. While we wait for the King and Queen to emerge from that United Kingdom branded plane, Rafe, how big is this moment to have our head of state, the head of the Church of England, arriving in Rome and to go to pray with the head of the Roman Catholic Church?
This is hugely significant, both historically and also personally for His Majesty the King. Historically, because, as Cameron was saying, this is the first time that a British, or actually English monarch, has prayed with the Pope since the 16th century, since the Reformation, when Henry VIII split from the Church to form the Church of England. But it's also, of course, only the second time that a British monarch has actually made a visit to the Vatican, following on from the King's mother, Queen Elizabeth II. We know how much the King respects the Catholic Church. He has been a long proponent of interfaith dialogue between other religions, be it Islam, be it Hinduism, be it Judaism, but he's also equally passionate about ecumenism, about the relationship between the denominations, particularly with the Orthodox Church. Of course, remember, on his father's side, there's a strong Orthodox tradition, but also the Catholic Church, very strong with him as well. And that's why, uniquely, something the Queen never did, the late Queen never did, he's going to be attending an ecumenical service with the Pope in the Sistine Chapel. And at that service, we're also going to have the choirs from the Chapel Royal and St George's, Windsor, combining together. You know, one of Britain's biggest contributions to Western civilization was English choral music in the Sistine Chapel, one of Italy's greatest contributions to Western civilization, all done to show how close these two religions are. And this, of course, is the Jubilee year, which is all about renewal of faith. Remember, the Pope gave Henry VIII the title of Defender of the Faith, but King Charles wants to very much be a defender of faith, knowing, of course, we live in a society now where we have people of all faiths here. And I think the doors are opening, so we should soon see the King emerging.
Yeah. Have the pair met before, Rafe? I mean, it's the first time we're going to see our King, our monarch, praying with the Pope since 1534. This is properly historic, isn't it? Let's not undercook this. This is a real moment in faith in the UK and the Roman Catholic Church and our relations with that.
It's hugely important. I mean, just think historically, the division that existed between the Catholic Church and the Anglican Church and Protestantism, the wars that were fought. Of course, we still have remnants of sectarianism in Northern Ireland, which thankfully have gone away now. But so much division. You know, yes. no churches, Catholic churches were built in Britain until the 19th century because of that division being so strong. The King, you can't be a member of the Catholic faith to become sovereign of this country. But here we have a demonstration that these two faiths have never been closer.
And have the pair met before?
I don't know whether they've met before, but certainly the King was the last person to meet Pope Francis. He was the last head of state, actually, to meet Pope Francis. His Majesty was supposed to arrive in April, but that was postponed to now. So it's a different Pope than the one he was originally planning to meet in this Jubilee year of the Church. But nevertheless, a good way, given, of course, that the Pope is a fellow English speaker, will make it much easier to converse.
And the government sees politics in this, of course. The Foreign Office says that this relationship with the Holy See is more important than ever, and it's an historic state visit. It's a key moment to strengthen the relationship with the Holy See. There is always politics in the background, isn't there?
Always politics in the background. We have to remember, of course, that he is visiting there ostensibly also Supreme Governor of the Church of England, but of course politics is never far behind.
We're just watching the images there. We're expecting the King and the Queen to emerge shortly from the airport there in Rome. I wonder if we can join our colleague Cameron, who's on the tarmac. Cameron Walker.
Hi there, Chris. Yes, so we're just moments away now from King Charles and Queen Camilla stepping off that plane. In fact, I think I can just about... Oh, no, that's his close protection officer who's just stepping off of the plane now and walking down the steps. His royal car with the Union flag has just pulled up onto the tarmac, which makes me think the King's departure is imminent. Of course, we have a Vatican ceremonial arrival of Swiss guards waiting on the tarmac to officially and formally greet His Majesty, which will be taking place in just a matter of moments. A number of dignitaries, of course, have been rolled out to meet His Majesty the King, including the ambassador to the Holy See, His Majesty's ambassador to the Holy See, Mr. Christopher Trott. We've got the deputy head of mission to the Holy See, Dr. Annabelle Ing. We've got the Vatican City head of protocol office, Monsignor Javier Domenico Fernandez Gonzalez, and the retired Apostolic Nuncio Archbishop Francesco Cannellini. So lots of dignitaries from there, ready to meet the King and Queen, who are just emerging from the aircraft now. And in the last moment, I have just received a statement from a spokesperson from His Majesty the King. And it reads, His Majesty is greatly looking forward to meeting Pope Leo and celebrating together the historical significance of this visit, representing, as it does, such a landmark in relationships between the Church of England and the Catholic Church, and between the UK and the Holy See. At times of such global challenge, it has seldom been more important for Christian communities around the world to unite in faith and in fellowship with our partners. This provides a bulwark against those promoting conflict, division and tyranny, and supports our work together in harmony to protect nature, God's creation. These are, of course, the issues that directly impact lives and livelihoods in Britain and around the globe, not just today, but for generations to come. As Supreme Governor of the Church of England, the King is proud that this week's state visit stands as a symbol and a celebration of how far we have come on this unifying journey. A statement there from His Majesty the King's official spokesperson. The Queen, for those of you interested in royal fashion, is wearing a feather print silk dress by Fiona Clare and a brown cashmere trench coat by Anna Valentine. No particular jewellery to note, I am told, although perhaps we have asked. The King and Queen, of course, just greeting those dignitaries which have assembled on the tarmac with the Vatican for the Vatican ceremonial welcome. I'll just repeat them for you. So we have His Majesty's official ambassador to the Holy See, Mr. Christopher Trott, the Deputy Head of the Mission to the Holy See, Dr. Annabelle Ing, the Vatican City Head of the Protocol Office, Monsignor Javier Domingo Fernandez Gonzalez, and retired Apostolic Nuncio, Archbishop Francesco Cannellini. And all of this, of course, taking place live at Ciampino 31st Wing Airport, just outside of Rome. And this is the only official engagement we have from King Charles and Queen Camilla, who have just got into their cars as it is driving off the tarmac to their official residence here in Rome. Buckingham Palace keeping quite tight-lipped exactly where they're staying. But of course, tomorrow is the big day for them, where King Charles historically becomes the first British monarch in 500 years to publicly pray with a pope since the Reformation, the supreme governor of the Church of England praying publicly with the head of the Roman Catholic Church. It truly will be a symbolic and historic moment.
Cameron Walker, thank you for an excellent commentary and perfect timing watching the plane land there. And of course, King and Queen taking off now towards the Holy See to meet with the Pope. Now, back in the UK, the grooming gang's inquiry lurches from crisis to crisis. And we can speak now with Jim Gamble, the former policeman who resigned today from the running to be the inquiry's chair, and also GB News national reporter Charlie Peters. Jim Gamble, I think you're there for us now, sir. Jim Gamble, thank you for joining us. You've said in a letter today that you're tired of the political point scoring. You must be deeply disappointed to have to withdraw from this inquiry.
I am. I think there's been, misinformation, and I feel for the victims and survivors who feel yet again that they're stuck in the middle, and there's evidence that they're being pulled in different directions, and some of that is about misinformation, and some of it's about party political point scoring. I mean, you introduced me, as a former police officer, and of course I am. I'm former because I resigned 15 years ago in protest at what Theresa May was doing to the Child Exploitation and Online Protection Centre. In the 15 years since, I have been involved in a range of reviews which have called out the police in and across the UK, have highlighted failings in social care and elsewhere. And one of your reporters covering this not that long ago, when describing me as this former police officer, said that one of the problems was that I wouldn't understand modern slavery. I was in at the ground floor when we began to learn about modern slavery, to understand the impact of it, and to be able to align that with the human trafficking that takes place, not just internationally, but locally. And I held the Association of Chief Police Officers lead on these issues. So I think, everyone plays a part, and everyone needs to be responsible when they are pushing out information to victims who are carrying this burden of pain, because misinformation actually misinforms and it leads to people making judgments on what they think is credible and factual information when actually it isn't.
OK, Jim, hi.
Jim Campbell, thank you. Charlie Peters with me now.
Yeah, Jim, I think you're referring to me when you're saying the reporter who made reference to modern slavery. Well, I was referring to a comment made to me by one of the survivors who interviewed you, and that was a concern they had shared based on conversation with you, saying his background is brilliant. And I did also share many of the positive comments that survivors engaging with you had heard, but said that they were worried about a lack of modern slavery knowledge. But I'm glad to have you put your expertise on the record on that here today. But perhaps there was just a limited time to explain that background to the survivors, because of course we know that they had to submit their questions in advance and not all survivors were able to attend that interview. Are you concerned, as many of them have said, that the process was stage managed and that you weren't afforded the opportunity to discuss your background more broadly?
I mean, look, thank you for that clarification. I really appreciate it. I think, yes, there are issues. I spoke to 2 victim and survivors panels, which is indicative, I think, of some of the problems that the Home Office are trying to manage, because different people come from different lived experiences and have different hopes, fears and expectations. I was totally unaware that they had to have their questions, proofed by someone. And in fact, I totally... I find that abhorrent. That shouldn't happen. These are people who are reflecting their lived experience. As I said to them at the time, if I had been successful, the first thing I would want to do is give them the opportunity to speak to me in groups if that's more comfortable. But actually, people need the opportunity sometimes to share some of the detail they have in private, in one-to-one. And so to me, it would have been stepping beyond the small groups that have been brought together for this purpose into creating a network of survivors who are able to speak to and inform the chair and challenge the chair, because no 2 experiences are the same. And I was really, I was really disappointed that, some of the survivors like Fiona Goddard felt that she had to leave the process because she wasn't happy with it. And at the time, I couldn't reach out to her, which is what I would have wanted to do, because I didn't want to do anything that would have made the process inappropriate. But that's a person who has been really, really good in the way that they've been able to speak out. They've used their experience courageously. And I think she, for one, has demonstrated a generosity of spirit in the way she looks at it from both sides. So it was one of the things for me is if someone with my background in policing, which is undeniable, is going to be the predominant inhibitor for people like Fiona participating, then I don't want to inhibit that. I think this has got to be victim-centric. And I made a promise when I spoke to the survivors that if I couldn't get their complete trust, that I would step back. And I think I got a huge amount of trust from a majority, but not all. And when you're given the privilege of speaking to these young people who have the courage to come forward, who share their journey and the pain that's inflicted, then you need to be true to your word. And that's one of the reasons I've stood down. The party politics and the toxic atmosphere around it, is very much the context that's around it. And my goodness, if politicians can't come together cross-party on this, when are they ever going to come together?
And Jim Gamble, we've also heard the Safeguarding Minister, Jess Phillips, talking about how every institution in the country failed. And so it doesn't matter the background of the person that's selected in terms of that disqualifying them, because it's not just police officers and social workers who were involved in causing extreme suffering for these poor victims and survivors, but also judges, of course, who criminalised many of the victims, or courts that took their children away while they were fighting for justice. Do you think that's going to make it extremely difficult for any panel of survivors to adequately trust any appointed chair? And do you fear that this toxic environment you're referring to is going to seriously scupper that job hunt process?
Well, great point. I think the toxic environment, there needs to be a pause now. There needs to be a calming. Those people in positions of responsibility need to think about the victims and survivors rather than their own political point scoring. What I would say to you about occupation is this. You're absolutely right. There's none of us in the criminal justice system, in the social care system, in education, have covered ourselves in glory in the past. All of those sectors have been complicit in the harm that has taken place and in the cover-up, in the aftermath of it. But that doesn't mean every individual within every aspect. So I'm sure you can get a judge. I'm sure you can get the right police officer. I'm sure you can get someone with a social care background. Louise Casey is a social worker, and she's created this platform. But the judgment needs to be made on the basis of the individual's character, rather than their previous occupation. So what have they done? What can you measure by virtue of deed rather than the words that people will use to try and convince someone at the right time in the right place that they're the right person? look at their career profile and their career history. You know, from my point of view, you know, I have challenged. I delivered the Child Q review. I challenged the Metropolitan Police around institutional racism. I challenged the West Midlands Police around the incompetence that I saw, and it's a public document, following the death of, Arthur Binjo Hughes, a death I believe, if the police had done their job right, could have actually been averted. So you've got to look at the individuals and check, you know, whether their words are supported by evidence of their deeds.
Well, Jim Gamble, thank you for joining us, and also Charlie Peters, our colleague there, our National News reporter. We've been in the studio at GB News. Westminster is leader of Reform UK, Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage, your reaction there from Jim Gamble, wanting to pause, take the politics out of it, do right by the victims.
Yeah, he argues very, very well. He argues very, very strongly. But I can understand the victims saying, look, we can't have police marking the homework of other police. We can't have social workers marking, the performance.
15 years ago, he says.
I know that, but that is how they feel. That the victims feel that from, and by the way, when you were on the Telegraph in 2014, I was up in, if you remember, I was up in Yorkshire, I was in Rotherham, and we were talking about this, I was talking about this. They just feel whoever chairs this needs to be genuinely independent. I wouldn't personally question Mr. Gamble's motivations or professionalism, but understand it from their perspective. I think also, the way they've been talked to in the run-up to this, they're very, very angry. In fact, Fiona Goddard will be joining me live on GB News at 7 o'clock to say why she thinks Jess Phillips, the Safeguarding Minister, should go.
Well, yeah, and hopefully they'll get to the end of it. You think it should be a judge or a foreign judge? A judge was ruled out by the PM.
I think it has to be a judge. We have to trust that a judge is the right neutral person to do this. I'm also beginning to ask myself whether an inquiry is the right route. Nigel will have more experience than me, but after the banking crisis of 2008, there was a parliamentary commission that actually forced Fred the Shred under subpoena laws to come to Parliament. There may be better ways of doing this.
OK. Good to see you here, because you're on strike. We had a debate on the channel about why. You explain to listeners and viewers why you're on strike.
This Parliament is the most unrepresentative of where politics in the country is today and the arguments are today in the history of Parliament. So I have to sit through PMQs every week. I've got Ed Davey having a go at the member for Clacton, the Prime Minister accusing me of God knows what, and very often 4 or 5 mentions. And it doesn't matter what we do. Richard Tice bobs up and down to try and speak. I've tried bobbing up and down. We don't get called. I get 4 or 5 questions a year. I'm not going to sit there and have criticism coming from the PM and everybody else and not have a chance to respond. I'm treated like I'm a spectator, so in future I'll view it from the spectators' gallery.
Nigel Nelson, he's got a point, isn't he?
I take the point. However, I do think, Nigel, as a party leader, part of that duty should be to be in the chamber of the House of Commons, not sitting up in the gallery.
Not if I can't respond.
Well, if the Speaker were to call you, he couldn't call you from up in the gallery.
He could, actually. The last time it happened was 1953.
It's a long time ago. It is unlikely, though, isn't it? Yeah.
Very.
I think
it's unlikely in the Commons.
Well, I know it's unlikely, but it might happen, in which case, as a party leader, the chamber is the right place for you to be.
I'm not going to be a punch bag for the leaders of the other parties with no chance to respond, period. I'm on strike from PMQs in the chamber.
You'll see the Speaker shortly, 2 days' time. Because he, of course, can call you away from the list, can't he? So maybe you might want to say, call me more often. But then guess what? The Greens complain. The Independent Palestinian grouping complains. The Lib Dems complain.
But they are not attacked. The point about parliamentary debate is people can say what they like. You must get the chance to respond. I can make a point of order at the end, but that's not the same thing. And they are not attacked by the Prime Minister every single week.
You've heard the Tories are saying you're literally on the sidelines now. The Tories are opposing the government in the chamber. You're watching with your pal Aaron Banks from above.
The Tories. Oh, I remember them. Yes.
Will it work?
They are irrelevant in the national debate. They might have prominence in PMQs because of what happened a year ago, but they are irrelevant in national debate. And unfortunately, the Commons reflects the last election, not where we are today.
Not where the polls are, but they move around. Nigel Nelson, we're talking about reform and his strike. It's working, isn't it?
Well, I still think that democracy is about elections rather than about the polls. I appreciate you're zooming up in the polls, got all that, but actually you should respond to the vote that's just been taken rather than one that might be taken in the future.
Fine, I've got other things to do then.
But as things stand, just for our viewers and listeners, your strike remains until you can get a question in PMQs.
I'm expecting a conversation with the Speaker, Lindsay Hoyle, and maybe we'll find a way around this. But unless I made my own very gentle protest, I couldn't really put this on the agenda. And hey, you know what? You're all talking about it.
Nigel Nelson, just finally, will it work?
No, I don't think it will work, and I'm sure we'll see you back in the chamber very shortly.
You won't.
Thank you to the two Nigels. Nigel Farage, you're on at 7 p.m. tonight. We'll tune in. Nigel Nelson, thank you for 3 hours' work. You've been great here. It's 6 p.m, and that means it's Jubes & Co. And I had to find out from the Queen of Primetime herself, Michelle Dewberry. Michelle, what's on your show?
Well, thank you, Christopher, for continuing that moniker there. I liked it. Look, so much that we need to talk about. I will get Charlie Peters back on. We want to dissect this whole grooming gang farce. Speaking of farce, one in, one out. You sent one back to France. He's got on a not-so-small boat and come straight back again. It is an absolute mess. So much we need to discuss. Matt Goodwin will be on the panel, as will Carl Cashman from the Lib Dems. Grab yourself a cup of something or a glass of something strong. I'll see you in a sec.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good evening, this is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. We begin with significant congestion affecting the M4 eastbound off-slip at junction 33, Capel-Lanilturn. In Rotherham, motorists on the M1 northbound are experiencing delays due to lane closures caused by a breakdown at junction 31. Meanwhile, the Cheshire West and Chester area reports heavy traffic on the M53 northbound at junction 10. In Milton Keynes, a collision has resulted in all lanes being closed on the A5 northbound. Additionally, train services between London Paddington and Heathrow Airport, as well as Reading, are facing disruptions. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
There's 2 weeks remaining in our latest, greatest giveaway. You could be in the driving seat of this Benamar Primera motorhome. This luxurious home from home comes with all the mod cons. Plus, you can use it with your current driving licence. We'll also boost your bank account with a whopping £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like. It only takes one entry to become a winner. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message.